Here. Nichols.
Here.
Like to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, agenda approval. I think we have a couple small tweaks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In front of page 8, we do have a request to, staff has a request to remove item 7F. Staff has the updated resolution that was reviewed by the city attorney for number 9B, is in your packet out at the council packet outside, as well as the addition of a closed session number 12.
Yep.
Related to the Hackmore project that was updated on the website as soon as we learned that there was an inadvertent clerical error on it. And then those could be the main changes for us.
Sounds good. Anything else from council? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Commission representatives. Potentially, Mark, are you here in commission?
No.
John Horn and Phil Christensen potentially.
Phil Christensen is joining us virtually. Please wait.
Sounds good.
Way back.
Okay, and on to open forum for items not on tonight's agenda.
Anyone wanting to comment on items not on the agenda, state your name and address for the record. Anyone joining us virtually can press *9. If you're joining us on a phone, or click reactions and raise your hand if you're joining us on an electronic device. Mayor and council, at this time, no one is raising.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, how many people we got online?
Right now, we have 11 people on.
Thank all of them for watching from home. Thank you all for coming.
Do we have this TV was freaking out. I don't know if that's going to be an ongoing problem.
Working on that, I think we should be
Sounds good.
just.
Perfect. Okay, then we will go on. Let's see, we don't have any presentations. So consent agenda, we removed item 7F. So it consists of 7A through E, G, and H. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Just real, if we could just spend a minute on 7H, that would be great.
Yeah. Sounds good. I want to pull 7G briefly as well. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A through E.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 7G, I just wanted to pull to make sure that we had 3 people that can make it on the 13th in 3 weeks. 3-ish weeks.
I know the mayor will be there.
Nope, he will not.
The new and
Acting
improved mayor will be there.
It'll be a
I'll be
mayor.
here.
Perfect. Sounds good.
I'll be there.
Works for me. I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 7G.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then 7H, Dean.
7H, I know it was a big deal. I know it was a mistake or oversight or whatever we want to call it on our part. I wanted to make sure we said it again. We said it well last time. We made a mistake. I believe everything is back to the way it was, Jessica. Will the people get reimbursed, checks cut back, or is it a credit? Because just clarification around those things in case any of those folks are listening. I just wanted to make sure it came from us.
We do have the fee schedule amendment. Once you approve it, then we can go ahead and do refunds. That is our putting it back.
Right.
Our new credit rental property. That friends of the 1 unit resident equivalent unit. And then we'll continue to look at options for that program and try to make sure that we have some additional questions.
So everything will get straightened out in a month? How long will it get?
So.
It'll go quick. Okay.
At the end of the month, there's gonna be a letter that goes with it as well, so they'll give credit on your.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you, Maggie, if she's not on. Everything again, just makes it one of those things I gotta spend more time and a closer look at stuff like that. I just assumed everything was gonna be pretty close. So thanks, guys.
I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 7H.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. On to planning business, we have 8A and 8B, a public comment opportunity for both of those, which is the sketch plan for, is it Amira or Amira? Amira Village, and then the PUD zoning ordinance discussion.
Well, here, anyone joining us in the audience who'd like to speak on planning items 8A or B can approach the podium and state your name and address. Anyone joining us virtually who wants to speak on those items, is star 9 or raise your hand via phone. Otherwise, click reactions and raise your hand. Recognize it. Mayor and council at this time, no one is raising their.
Perfect. Then we'll go into 8A. Council plan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So Amira Village in front of you tonight is the sketch plat in planned unit development, PUD. Next slide. The applicants are Hempel Acquisition Company and Truck Development, and United Properties is also technically an applicant, an end user at this stage of the sketch plan. They're soliciting feedback from council on the Chastich property, which is northeast of the County Road 10 and Maple Hill Road intersection. It's roughly 38 acres and it's sandwiched between Bass Lake Crossing to the south and Maple Hill Estates to the north. The sketch plat shows 141 single family homes. And again, the narrative explains this would be for United Properties. It's a 50-foot, they have 102 50-foot wide lots to the south and then 39 44-foot wide lots to the north. And they are proposing an intentional rental community with amenities such as a clubhouse, fitness center, social room, outdoor pool, pickleball and bocce ball courts, and a pet exercise area. The sketch plat does show a off-road trail along the northern property boundary, which is also shown in our 2040 comprehensive plan. And the estimated net density is 3.9 units per acre, which aligns with what our goals are for a single family residential guided area. As the part of the PUD, the flexibilities that they are requesting from our typical residential districts is a proposed minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet, a minimum lot width of 44 feet, and staff noted that as drawn, some of these lots would need to be measured at the required front yard setback if it's on a curve, which we don't currently allow. We allow for some flexibility when it's on a cul-de-sac, but not on a curve. So that would have to be a flexibility, or they would have to adjust the plans. A side setback of 5 feet, and staff also noted that a 5-foot setback from the side property lines for a driveway would also likely be required, and then a 25-foot rear setback. Next slide. Additionally, there's a few lots that have the shoreland overlay. It's lots 34, 39 of the 50-foot wide lots, and again, it's pretty similar flexibilities as compared to what they're asking for from the typical residential standards. So 5,000 square foot minimum lot size where 20,000 feet would be required, a 50-foot wide lot where 125 feet would be required. Additionally, they would likely need flexibility from the impervious surface limit. Specifically, lot 34 looks like it would need to have some kind of flexibility. That's not defined at this time. The applicant said that they would have that defined by preliminary plat though. Next slide. They are not requesting any flexibilities from architectural standards at this point, but staff did note that it might be difficult for them to comply with the garage standard, which is 55% of the, it cannot exceed 55% of the viewable ground floor street facing linear building frontage. It's a bit of a mouthful. The plans may comply, but dimensions and calculations were not provided. So the council, it may be helpful to discuss if there is room for negotiation with the standard. Next slide. One of the larger components for the sketch plan is the discussion on how this would fit in with our rental dwelling ordinance draft that we are working on. Part of the PUD flexibility would be an exemption from the rental dwelling license limit, specifically the cap on a single entity owning more than 3 rental licenses on single family homes, townhomes, and twin homes, in addition to the rental density cap of 25% of the units within a block if it's within a low density residential area, which would apply to this property. And so if the council is open to a rental community in general, or on a case-by-case basis, we can approve it through the PUD, or we could approve it by reworking our own draft to exempt intentional rental communities as approved by council. Next slide. The potential PUD benefits proposed for negotiation are likely improvements of Maple Hill Road to the benefit of existing residents, church users, and future residents. A feasibility study will help define what is recommended versus required. A landscape boulevard at the development entrance. Pavement of a public trail at the developer's expense. The proposed PUD ensures an appropriate transition between Bass Lake Crossing to the south with 50-foot lots that match that development, as well as manufactured home park to the north with 44-foot lots in between. The HOA maintained amenity and open space, and finally, a commitment to complete environmental cleanup on the site from the previous user. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
It's a Kevin question. I don't expect you to have an answer for this, but how much do you think that environmental cleanup is gonna cost? If
I don't even know the scope of it. I haven't read the report, so.
aren't you an engineer? Can't you just don't you have that
It depends on.
off the top of your mind? I'm just kidding.
I did see, I don't have enough info on what the actual leak is, so, I mean.
And that's yet to be defined too. I don't believe the applicant truly knows the scope of it. That's part of what they will have to do. That is part of the requirements.
Yeah,
And so that's something that they're willing to commit to getting taken care of. But the scope will be part of what gets defined as things move forward, and the cleanup would be the actual benefit.
I'm just curious as to why there's an environmental issue, why the existing landowner wouldn't be on the hook for cleaning it up.
No, it's a fair point. I think it's a matter of what actually gets required. I think they would be able to, the applicant would be able to speak to it a bit more than I. But my understanding is the change in use, the moving of the dirt, that's when basically triggers the cleanup action. So you could have a situation where someone purchases the land and continues to use it as is, where it could remain indefinitely.
But
Sounds good. Well, when you guys are up,
yeah, for sure. Just I'm just gonna think aloud. Just remember that we as a group can't talk about these things until we get together. So we haven't had discussions, so we kind of have to make it up as we go along sometimes. Be prepared, but have
I'm sorry.
have less structure and ask questions. But I do want to know that, and that'll be part of it. And so part of the question is too, like, suppose we unlock the door of that there's an environmental concern at a property. Can that not be cleaned up? That's a question I would have. Hopefully you have that answer. And then also when we think about, this is just a tangent, but if we get questions here sometimes about the solar farm question ordinance and people asking, remember that somebody has to clean these things up. So it's at that time, remember this case where all of a sudden we have an environmental cleanup as part of the discussion. That's a total aside, but just keep that in mind if we ever have a discussion on those things. Carry on.
Yeah, no problem. And I was just gonna say, Counselor Bottom, again, the scope would have to be defined, but I do know the Dundee nursery, that was millions of dollars to get that cleaned up, and they were able to get some grants, but not all of it was covered by the grants they were gotten. They did not get as much as they were hoping for. So it is a fairly expensive and intensive process, is my understanding. So
Well, I would just say, unless we know more, it depends on the data, the extent, the testing.
Yeah.
It's like a whole gamut and it's
Yeah.
unknown at this time. I think they're still
Yeah.
doing their due diligence on what the cost would be. So that's all I'll say is I think it's unknown at this time, and it can vary wildly from millions of dollars to
Yeah.
$25,000,
Fair enough.
depending on what the situation is. We don't know at this time with staff.
Other than that, at this point, council should provide feedback to the applicants on the sketch plat and proposed public benefits. While the feedback is non-binding, it will be used by the applicant to help guide them as they move forward in this process. That's what I have for you.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Natalie? We want to hear from the applicant.
We're on our applicant presentation first. That's my vote.
Yeah.
Whoever of you guys wants to start it off, feel free.
Yeah, I'll start, and then she can come up and.
Perfect.
answer your questions about it. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, I'm Beth, who said, we're trying to help me set up and work it up and explain the environmental research that we've been undergoing later. Yeah, this is also. I would like to introduce United Properties and the industry experts that come along with us today to answer more questions and provide some data and some information. But first, I would like to introduce the landowner, the Chasters are here, Sharon and her family are here tonight. And I'd like to give a little bit of history.
Where are they?
Oh,
So we can look at them. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Stan Chastik and Sharon Chastik moved here in 1971. They moved from Hopkins, Minnesota. They wanted to expand a new endeavored greenhouse business that Stan had started in Hopkins. So they moved here to Corcoran on 40 acres to expand their greenhouse business and raise their family. They started in 1971 and they closed their business in 2021. So they ran a business, a very successful, well-respected business in the industry, and raised their family here for 50 years. So they've been here 50 years and she's ready to sell the land. And Sharon did give me permission to say that she would like to stay in the community. And she is considering, I think it's a rental, independent housing with St. Teresa. And she's thinking of doing it. So, nice that she has the opportunity to see a variety of housing to stay in the community. And that's kind of why we're here tonight, hoping that we can, at least, provide you with our thoughts about this project and this product and particularly this site. So when Trek looks at a piece of property to consider purchasing, developing in a community, we think, can you do me a favor? Can you put that in just like the picture of the property up? It just helps me. We like to obviously, as you know, need to consider the comp guide plan that you and the city have developed and what the rules are around that comprehensive guide plan.
Do you want
Is this the one you want?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right.
No, that's
Oh,
fine.
this is perfect. Okay.
That's fine. Just anything so that I can. So what we do thoughtfully to think about what it is that you have guided this property for. We also, maybe even more importantly, try to consider and do consider what's going on around the property, what it's guided, what it's zoned, what existing uses are. because it's, as you know, and as your ordinances indicate, it's important for us to consider transition. It's important for us to consider transition for existing neighbors, but it's also important for us to consider the transition for the people that are gonna be living in this community too. So just to give you a little bit of background, if you do have a conflict,
So,
but this particular property is guided low density residential. And the property to the east, which is the Gear property, is also guided low density residential, and that's adjacent to the east. That property is almost entirely in the shoreline overlay district and is located on Cook Lake. The property to the southeast, as you all know, is Cook Lake Highlands, and it is guided mixed residential. And also was developed as a mixed residential project. The property directly to the south of the site is Bass Lake Crossings, and that originally was guided mixed residential. The developer and my homes chose to getting lost on this word, reclassify it as low density residential. So that development was developed as a density residential subdivision, which was all 50-foot lots with 5 and 5 foot setbacks. The property directly, where you see the arrow directly to the east across Maple Hill Road, so we'll do directly west across Maple Hill Road is downtown mixed use and public use. And I think the public use refers to the church property maybe in here. Yeah. So, you can, and then finally, the property to the north is medium residential, which is,
Please speak up.
rental homes.
1 second, Beth. I don't know if the mic's on.
We have turned it up.
No, I mean, but her mic.
Mute, Ron, mute. Were you unable to hear? Oh, they're asking you just please speak up.
Okay. So again, property to the directly to the west across Maple Hill Road is downtown mixed use, which allows for a variety of different uses, including multi-family, high density, and commercial. So those are the considerations that we took when we looked at this property and started to design it and started to think about transitions, what were appropriate, what are you all asking for in some of your new buffering ordinances that you're considering at this time. So we, designed it with all of that in mind. With that said, I do want to introduce Dave Young from United Properties. He is here tonight to really give you a presentation on their Amira product. And we have some other industry experts here that have a wealth of information, and they've taught me a lot. So thank you. Also just would like to say thank you to council members and staff that came on our tour last week, and also on a short, quick tour this evening to come look at the product Edgewater Build for Rent community next door. Again, we really appreciate your time and effort to come and learn a little bit more about our product. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Dave Young. I'm with United Properties. So thank you for hearing us tonight on this concept sketch review. I understand this council was presented a similar concept review on a previous meeting. So we wanted to thank you in advance for taking the opportunity here to dive a little bit deeper into the benefits and the structure around a planned rental community. I'll explain a little bit about United Properties, a little bit about the product, about the site, and then I'll introduce Nikki Longy with Lincoln Property Management. She's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to really the operations, the tenant, the resident experience, and so on and so on. So we'll just kind of kick off if you don't mind there. Next slide. I'm not going to say read these verbatim, but so United Properties has been developing residential housing since 2004. We have offices and communities located in Minneapolis, Denver, and the Austin markets. We really develop under three signature brands today. The Applewood Point is a for sale product. The Amira Choice is a assisted living, so rental housing with care available to it. And then the Amira is just a straight rental product. Slide, let's kind of keep moving on. So, missed one there, but that's all right. We also obviously do market rate apartments as well. Our primary role has been all multifamily to date. We have not done a single family for rent product, but we've done hundreds or more than 1,000 rental units in this market alone. So we've teamed up with kind of industry leading premier operators, management company in Lincoln, and RT Residential from a general contractor's perspective to work with us and Beth and others in this community. So we'll just talk about the site there a little bit. Planner Davis there kind of gave you the location and whatnot, so I won't spend too much time on that. I think we're all familiar with the locations. Maybe just jump to the next one. Again, I think, yeah, I'll respect your time here. Don't need to be redundant on the size of the lots and the transition that we are going from Bassett Woods up to the Maple Hill Estates, is it called? So, yeah, maybe we'll just jump to the next one here. We really just talk about the purpose of a purpose-built community or a planned rental community is really providing that lifestyle that people desire. It's the maintenance-free lifestyle. We're proposing adding amenity-rich community, including the clubhouse. The clubhouse will have full-time staff in it. The full-time staff is dedicated to the community, property manager, maintenance director, and other staff as needed. The clubhouse there will have a club room, or a social gathering room, a fully furnished exercise fitness center, pool, pickleball courts, pet run area, and other amenities as we work through our unit mix and our unit demographic. We'll add amenities that are appropriate to the demographic that we're targeting, and we'll present that in our preliminary PUD application. So there's just some images if you didn't have a chance to see them in the staff report. Going on now to the actual kind of product, the homes that we're proposing. These are just concept elevations of existing homes that exist on the market, and some of them are very similar to what is next door in Edgewater. But these homes will incorporate luxury style finishes, quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, luxury vinyl plank, window treatments, really very high end finishes that you find in very nice homes. The homes will incorporate smart technologies, like smart thermostats, water sensors, smart locks. It really allows the resident to kind of come and go in that maintenance-free lifestyle. If there's a water leak happening, management company sometimes knows before the resident knows and can react in a very timely manner. So I'll let Natalie maybe speak a little bit more about that. All homes.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
Is that real wood or vinyl?
What you're seeing there is like a fiber cement board or a smart side.
Okay.
Hardy, Hardy's a brand name.
Yeah.
But that's what you're seeing there, the
Okay.
board and batten, and that's what we're proposing on these homes. At least the front elevations will have some type of feature like that. All homes will have a high-speed internet. There'll be scheduled maintenance inside and outside. So all the lawns will be kept up, all the snow will be removed, all the fertilization is being done and aerating, and all that is being taken care of throughout the community. All the homes come as part of the general contractors providing 327A state statutory warranty, so they all come with that full 2-year, 10-year statutory warranty, so they're built with a very high quality, top to bottom. Homes will have a mix of architecture and colors, anti-monotonous throughout the community. These are just 3 examples, just to give you a little feel for what we're proposing. So that's it on the product. I'd like to introduce Nikki Longy again with the Lincoln Property Management. She'll just spend a couple minutes just talking about some demographics here.
Can I ask you a side question? You mentioned Applewood Point as a for sale
Yes,
development. But we saw it flip to a rental.
yeah. Well, if the for sale market has hit plenty of headwinds in the last couple of years. We made an attempt at it. We did not get enough buyers. We had plenty of interest, but just not enough buyers for it. So we are, Beth and others are proposing some other use.
On that Applewood, is there a way you can get the sign down?
Yes,
We
Yes.
need to.
I saw that today.
It's been a while.
Yes, Councilman, yes.
We gotta clean this stuff up, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Nikki Longy. I work with Lincoln Property Companies, the second largest property management company in the nation. So we know what we're doing and we do it well. I've had the privilege of working in the single family rental atmosphere for the last 3 years. We took over our first community in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, our first move in July of 2020. So we've really invested a lot of time and effort into what we do as a community, how we manage. We've taken some of the expertise that we've learned in our traditional multifamily towers, and we've implemented them into our single family developments. Some of the things that you heard from our different members here that are on this project have been true here, and I know we've toured some of you through our homes. But some of the things that you may be interested in knowing is how we run our management company itself. So one of the things, there are several of the things that we use in multifamily that we would incorporate here in a community would be the background checks. Everyone would go through the application process. So that means all neighbors and community members in our establishment would go through the same security background check, income verification requirements.
Are you sure you can do that in Minnesota anymore?
The security background checks,
Yes.
absolutely. We do it every day. So we want to make sure that. Yes, we do it every day. So, and it is a big part of what we do. We want to make sure that we are protecting our product, and we want to make sure that we are protecting the city itself and the development that we're working with. We take a lot of pride in what we do. We want to make sure that everyone that lives in our community feels at home, that they are welcome, that they understand that they are a big part of the community. We get a lot of people that have currently or already have lived in the community that are looking to stay there, but looking for a different opportunity. And that's something that we can provide. So I've been in property management for a very long time. Actually, it was in 2008 after that recession that I jumped from commercial into residential, and it's been a passion of mine ever since. So some of the things that you can see up there are the benefits of our planned rental communities. We have the full-time staff, as Dave mentioned. We'll have a manager on site. We have 24-hour on-call emergency maintenance. So if anything would happen in the middle of the night, we have our teams that our residents are able to call a live agent, speak to someone that dispatches our maintenance person that's out within 20 minutes to handle the issue. The smart technology that Dave mentioned as well is also a great precursor for us. So sometimes you may not know that the mechanicals in your home, like your HVAC unit, your water heater, water softener, could be a little leak in the garage. We keep all of our maintenance in our home atmosphere in the garage so that our techs can get in there without disturbing the peace of the people that live in that community. And those are the things that we are able to provide, and you know, that leak detection system that Dave was talking about. So those sensors will set off alarms to our on-call maintenance and to our management staff. We'll let you know, hey, by the way, you have a leak in your garage. We're on our way out to look at it. If you feel it's a false alarm, please call us off, but we're here to handle the problem. So we are proactive. We are engaged. We are a part of the community. We create great establishments and relationships with our neighbors, with the retail, with anyone that is interested. We host community events. We invite others that are maybe not living in our community to enjoy our community on those public access situations. Otherwise, we create those community events for our residents as well. Things like paint and sip. If you want to learn how to paint, we've got people that will help you with a design there. We do national night out parties where we open up the clubhouse in the pool area. The neighbors will shut down their streets and they're able to bike up and down and rollerblade and do all the fun things that we do in the summer in Minnesota. So those are some of the items that we're able to do. I see up there, we talk about freedom to pursue other interests. It may be interesting to move out of Minnesota or live in another area in the middle of winter. I think we all are dreaming about it right now. And that's something that we can provide. So we can make sure that your home is being maintained while you are enjoying the sun and the fun in another area. So, you won't have to worry about any pipes freezing. You won't have to worry about somebody entering your home without us knowing. Those smart rent technology that looks at the lock and allows us to see who's been entering the home, maintaining and managing all that happens on the community. And living and socializing in the mirrors. We touched on that a little bit. So again, we're creating community for the people that live there. We want to be able to provide an opportunity for someone who is transitioning from possibly a home that they had lived in for a long time and building a new home, and they need that time in between to live and they want to stay in the community. We see different family members that are creating new family environments, whether, people coming into the community, they're separating their house, but they still want to live next to each other. We provide that opportunity for you. You can move in within a few days of us going through the background check. And so we want to, it's important for us to keep communities together, to keep families available, to provide that lifestyle that you're accustomed to already, and then incorporate that into what we do in our property management. Some of the other things that you can see, so we have some planned rental amenities that are in the area already. We have one that I manage out in Maple Grove and one in Beacon Ridge. Some of the demographics that we have in that community are the average age for past tenants, current tenants, and future tenants is 47 and a half for the average age. The average income for the homes is about 250,000. And everybody that comes into the community should be at about 3.5 times the rent. So we do go through all of that to make sure that everybody has the same enjoyment and everybody you don't have to worry about some of the logistics of who bought the home next to you and who is across the street from you. We're making sure that we're maintaining that and watching and providing that atmosphere for anyone that would be interested in living in the community. So you can see that's an example of some of the amenities that we would have. We have a community center that people can come and enjoy, the fitness facility that Dave mentioned that we try to keep open 24 hours a day. We know that people love to work out at different times of the night and so an enjoyable atmosphere where all you have to do is do what you want to do and we take care of everything else. We want to provide an easy lifestyle for you and you can do what you want at your pleasure and we take care of the hard stuff like the ground maintenance and the preventative maintenance inside the homes and the fixing of the appliances and those types of things. So we want to take care of all the hard stuff while you get to enjoy all your life.
Is there anyone else from you guys or staff? Do you want to? Yeah, that'd be great if you wanted to touch on the pollution issue.
Evening, Mayor and members of council. I'll kind of give a high level explanation of the process with the environmental. I think Kevin said it very well. I've done many of these in my career, and it can range from a very large scope to a very small scope. So I'll just explain how the process goes for us. And it's a very typical process that most residential developers do every day. Or in every project, you typically start with your phase 1 environmental assessment. That typically is a very high level. What's been the use of the property? They'll interview the landowners, interview typically the buyer. What are you going to use the site for? That's usually kind of an industry standard that you do as a developer, and most lenders will require that. You know, if you go to get a development loan, lenders will typically require that for the home buyers too as well. And then from that report, it will say there's recognized environmental conditions. And it will say if there's additional work or investigation to be done. So in a case like this, we can say that there was a phase 2, it's called required, where there's recognized environmental conditions. And the Chastic family has provided us in this extensive, they know that site inside and out, and spent a lot of time with Beth and I walking us through an extensive map of the use, where things were stored, how they were stored, just very professional explanation of how they ran their business. Our consulting group is Braun, which is a very kind of a very well-known environmental consulting group. So they came in and did the phase 1. Then phase 2 is in draft form. So what that phase 2 will typically say is, yes, we found something, in this case, a petroleum leak was found, which is not uncommon in a use like this. I've dealt with many of them in farm or greenhouse uses. And then Braun, we rely very heavily on their expertise and consulting to tell us exactly what the steps are as far as requirements. So there are requirements that need to be disclosed to the state. So if there's a leak, what happens is you have to dispose that to a state duty officer. And then what typically happens and is required of that is that it does enter a brownfield program. So that brownfield program would say it needs to verify the extent of the leak. So that has not been done yet. So I can't tell you what the extent of the leak is. But once that extent of that leak is determined, if the extent of the leak is determined and the boundaries of it are determined, you know, the exactly where it is. Typically, the state will, if there's no threat to surrounding soils or water, they can close the leak. So it would be on file at the state that there's a known leak there. That does not need to be until that dirt gets moved or the use of the site gets changed, that can stay that way forever. So that's very high level. And then we have to go through once the use is changed and any dirt gets moved, that is, so someone could just stay there forever if the use is never changed. If that dirt's never moved, it doesn't necessarily need to be remediated.
How about in the alternative, when the determination isn't that it's not threatening pollute either, other soils or
Okay.
the groundwater?
It's so case by case. I really can't.
Fair enough.
And we haven't gotten that far yet, so
Right.
we don't know. In what we know to date, it's not an extensive. It's an old leak that it's very not uncommon, but it is something that when the use gets changed, many dairy farms I've dealt with have it too. It is something that it is not necessarily required to be mitigated or remediated unless the dirt's being moved. It's very high level. I just want to make sure that's I'm not
It's
committing to.
No, it's a fair point. I just, on this particular issue, I would have trouble finding the public benefit of a private property cleanup. Whether. So it almost, I hear what you're saying. I understand it. I just struggled that it actually is some public benefit, but that doesn't take anything away from the rest of the.
I just hopefully if I could explain a little bit better, that's absolutely up to you to discuss, but I'm hopeful that explanation kind of tells you where we're at.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, it's private and so is public.
Mr. Mayor.
Well,
Hold on one second. Yeah, or John, go ahead.
I don't know what that means.
It's private now. There's a public element that happens in the development. You have public streets and public utilities, public
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah. But if we're talking specific to the contamination part. So it's,
I would agree with where I think you're going, but I think everybody would want to see all of Corcoran not be polluted. But in terms of how we would weigh a development decision in a PUD, I would treat it more as an expectation rather than a benefit.
well,
Is that what you're?
it's very, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very specific language that says the public must benefit from an environmental cleanup. And in this case, I don't really see a benefit of. It's a private property issue. The benefit of cleaning it up is that it can be developed. It's a private benefit that the public, I wouldn't. So in a PUD, we have to weigh, well, here are the rules, here are the here. If we give a little bit over here, the public has to benefit over here, and I don't think that the contamination cleanup is something that we need to add to the column of a public benefit. If anything is ever to happen to this site, it will have to be cleaned out. And so it is sort of like an expectation. But I don't want to cast a huge net that the project's bad. I just want to, we're asked to give our opinion on something, and on that piece, I wouldn't say that's a public benefit.
My experience came from in a little bit of history about this area and stuff, and the owners might know this too, but Cook Lake is one of the cleanest lakes in Minnesota. I used to live across the street from Lord of Life. 24 properties all had buried petroleum tanks, fuel oil tanks, those kind of things on 5-acre parcels. All of those had to get cleaned up. That was not a benefit to us or the city. It was a benefit to the environment and those kind of things. So I assume one fuel oil tank related to heating and those kind of things. Can I ask how big that tank was? Do we know? Is it still there? Here, has it been removed? Tank's been removed, but the dirt probably is contaminated and such, but again, a neighborhood not very far away from here, not very far away from Cook Lake. It can be cleaned up, but I agree with John, it's not a benefit to us to make it part of a PUD or anything. It's a benefit to our environment and those kind of things. So just past history, 24 tanks, ranging anywhere between 500 to 1,500 gallons buried. I'm sure there was issues in my old neighborhood, but that was taken on by the developer and such. Many of those tanks within 20-25 feet of the actual water wells, the drinking water and stuff. So it was a nice cleanup. It was a good thing, and many good things have gone into my old neighborhood and stuff. And again, the benefit to the public or making it a PUD and those kind of things, I don't see that as an advantage. It's one of those things. So
Gotcha. Good. So a lot of places we could start with some of the feedback. Does anyone have anything?
if I can, just one more thing that
Yeah.
concerns me, the layout and everything is intriguing. I think the last time when this was pulled from the meeting, I think we all said 50-foot widths would be acceptable, no smaller, and we come back with 44-foot wide properties, a mix of 44 and 50. When I do calculations,
Hang on a sec, hold on one second.
go ahead.
This was not CE.
That was the Cook Lake one.
Oh, yeah.
Those were, I think, smaller than 44 feet wide.
Well, I'm just saying, I thought we had said a 50-foot we'd go with. In this area, we are talking 39, 44-foot wide lots. So I think we said it pretty clear that 50-foot would be good, and
Yeah, I think we did, not necessarily for this specific property,
right.
but for the area. Yeah.
Right, for the
That-
area,
That was in a medium or mixed.
yeah. So I just,
Low.
that was number one. Number two, is it the Lure property to the east of this or north?
There's to the east.
It's to the east. I think I read in here, there is a clear right of way for that property to continue to be farmed and those kind of things.
That's-
Or are we landlocking them and making it so we can't get to plow his own field?
Counselor Varenkamp, that would be something that needs to get worked through. There, right now, the easement runs along the southern property line. So that is, I believe that was something called out by the engineering memo that the access would need to be provided to the east lot. So right now they're showing that public street that would go, or I'm assuming,
It's actually Berlin.
Yep,
Is
Berlin too.
goes to their site.
Yeah.
Directly to their site, so there is access now. but-
No, I understand that. I just want to make sure, and I know we're gonna do it. I do not want that property landlocked and no access and those kind of things. So I know it is. I'm speaking out as we all do up here. As John said, we don't get to talk about this privately and stuff. I'm concerned about that piece of property. And I'm also very concerned. Cook Lake, like I said, is one of the cleanest lakes in Minnesota. Rush Creek Golf Course does unbelievable thing to make sure that they don't pollute that lake and those kind of things. So, thanks.
Anyone else have a big one they want to start with?
I have some more questions for the applicant.
Okay.
And
Which applicant, which one of the applicants? Or
I'll
several?
let them figure it out.
Okay. That's good. And if maybe we could pass around the mic or something, so that like people at home probably can't hear if we're. Or if you can come up, either way. Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great.
And there's just one point of clarification for United Properties. So in the packet. I don't want to get this wrong, so I'll have you clarify, but in the packet, the last page shows a map of Emera communities in Minnesota. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this would be the only single family a rental unit you would have out of this group, right? The rest are multifamily.
That is accurate. Yes.
Okay, I wanted council to be clear on that, so in case you saw this and thought there's already two existing single family communities. Do you have any other rental management units with Lincoln currently?
We do not.
And then what is, if this developed and you did a deal with Lincoln, how is it that you can assure council that that's a long-term arrangement? So that you're not, what I want to be assured of is that you wouldn't be splitting property management companies at will. You know what I mean? That we have,
Sure.
because you're presenting Lincoln, I want to make sure
Yep.
Lincoln's there 5, 10, whatever years down the road. And then I guess I have a question back to staff is what happens if United Properties decides to sell?
Mhm.
And now we have another developer or another entity come in and own that property. And what's to stop another entity from flipping that from rental to for sale and get out of that? You can probably address the last one first.
Counselor Bottom, I'm sorry, Schultz, Counselor
Yep.
Schultz, I apologize, but there wouldn't be.
Not even close.
It's just ignoring names, yeah.
I read the wrong card. I apologize. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, there wouldn't be anything to stop it to moving from a for sale product. If that's what someone decided to do, they could decide to sell it themselves. And I think that actually would be, I mean, I feel like that's almost, what's the word? An escape gate, like if worst case scenario, the rental does not work out, they could sell it theoretically, because they would each have their own PIDs. So I don't know if that part is necessarily a concern, because the worst situation is that it would become a homeowner community. As far as the commitment between the property manager and developer, there would have to be an HOA with HOA agreements, and HOA standards, that I think that's something that we work through, and I think that would be able to, even if it is a different property manager, if the Lincoln were to dissolve and it goes to someone else, there would be expectations, I think, that we could align out in the HOA documents for the community.
Okay. That would apply both to the rentals and even if someone had a for sale unit mixed in there.
Correct, yes.
Okay. I guess my concern kind of building off that would be more, and I think you touched on this, if. Let's say 5 units or 10 units sold to a different company and they decided to do their own thing there and start turning it into their, you know. If we were to exempt this from our potential future rental ordinance. Would we have any sort of leverage to be able to say yes or no to that changing over? In the future?
So we could make, if the rental is seen as a part of the PUD approvals, then if we're moving to a for sale model, it would require a PUD amendment. We could theoretically write it that way. So we have some ability to evaluate the situation.
Sure.
Just
go ahead.
add a little explanation, or from a experience standpoint, Nikki, you probably know way better than I do, but one item to note on I think the HOA is a great comment to make, because then in previous entitlements that I've been involved with build for rent communities, the city has required as part of your approval that you establish the HOA just as you would with any typical for sale, and the city, and I believe in most of your PUDs, you require oversight over reviewing those HOA documents, so you could certainly make sure those HOA documents are to the standard that are required for the community.
Are HOAs, the documents amendable?
Yeah.
They're fine, they would be
They're
recorded.
Recorded with the county, are
Is
they
it-
amendable potentially?
Yeah,
to
so-
be
By the
special
HOA.
For the city.
Yeah, but I,
Typically, in my experience, they have been on a rental community different, because it'd be one owner that would own and manage the HOA, be one entity. In a typical for sale, once those get amended, it requires, whatever the bylaws require for an amendment with the HOA members.
Yeah, so potentially, I mean. They're amendable. The
I
city will
see
have
what-
no say
I think
as
yeah,
what if the neighborhood decides to do it something different, the city would have no say.
Or could.
but on the flip side too, we would also have a rental license. So if they stopped maintaining it, the rental license could be revoked. We would have some ability to hold them to the standards they're promising.
Yeah, but they'd already be selling the homes, so the rental license would be needed.
But again, if they're selling the homes, we're talking about a PUD amendment. So it's not something that would.
So they would have to come in with a PUD amendment.
And you would have to approve it, yeah, so I mean, I think there are ways that we could work out the ability for you to have oversight. If they really aren't delivering on their promises, we would be able to, there would be consequences that we would be able to enforce.
20, 30 years down the road, they would have to do a PUD amendment.
Correct, yes, there are cities now that are fully built out, that have a lot of PUDs, and they love their PUDs because they have complete oversight on how that gets redeveloped. So that is a long-term benefit of PUDs, is the city gets oversight in how those changes happen.
Oh, can I make one more comment
Sure.
on the question? I think Mayor McKee, you talked about a small portion of the project turned to a different rental company. I think there's ways to work through whether, in the rental licensing. I know we've gone back and forth as we've talked about the rental of, is it one license or is it several? And I think that's all things that need to be discussed and the pros and cons of each.
You're fighting a little battle of that we don't have a community. Or we don't have a community like this in our town, so we're learning about
We come.
how that all goes too.
I will say this, your staff has spent a lot of time researching and working on the rental ordinance. I certainly know that. Doing their best due diligence they can.
Thought I had something, but I lost my train of thought.
So can I go?
Please do.
Would. It's the the density is what,
3.9 is estimated.
yeah. So I'll just comment, sketch plans, what I kind of like is in a sketch plan is like a napkin idea. You guys have done a lot of work on this, so, it's obviously well thought out and well put together. To me, we have, after this discussion, we have a PUD discussion on rewriting our PUD code or expectations of PUD. And I really struggle with what we get out of this PUD exception. I actually like I'm not a big fan of rentals, but I actually, as far as a rental community, I kind of like the product. It doesn't, it
Can I
could,
piggyback off that quick?
yeah,
Because I agree with what I think the product is. The confusion I'm having is it doesn't seem well defined what that product is exactly. We looked ones that you showed us, and the ones that there was a concept images of, but correct, there's no builder yet. Oh. And who are you with? Okay, sorry, I missed that. I think when we spoke last, that wasn't maybe determined yet. I don't know. Okay, that helps with just kind of trying to visualize what exactly. it would be.
Nice. Speak a little bit about that too, and where it evolved.
If you want to, you're more than welcome to. No pressure if you don't want to either.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tim Wells with
pizza's done.
with RT Residential. So RT Residential is part of the Tradition family of companies. You might be familiar with Robert Thomas Homes, Tradition Development, and Abec Construction. The Tradition family of companies has been around for about 125 years. In 2020, we were approached by an ownership group to gauge our interest in starting an entity to specifically focus on single family build for rent. And you know, as from a business decision, we thought, hey, this is where the market's kind of pulling us. We do about 250 for sale homes a year. Our median sales price last year was about 750,000, and we just felt like, hey, there's changes coming. Let's be prepared for it. So we started this separate entity, RT Residential, in 2020. We did first project was a 37, very similar layout project in Plymouth. That went well. Since then, we've done 5 projects. Our smallest one has been 81 single family homes, and our largest one that we're working on right now in Inver Grove Heights is 120 single family built for rent homes. Last year, we completed about 175.
What are those single family for rent homes?
Yep, just like we're talking about here. Yep.
Do we have addresses of those neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think they were referenced before, but
Oh, okay.
Beacon Ridge in Plymouth, Canvas at Woodbury in Woodbury, Canvas at St. Croix in Woodbury, Canvas at Inver Grove, Preserve at Albertville, and then the one that some of you guys toured, Edgewater at Cook Lake, just east of Maple Grove. We're building that one as well.
And those are single family homes?
Yep.
What's the one in Albertville?
It's called the Preserve at Albertville.
I don't want to go to Woodbury. My truck gets like a gallon a mile.
Yeah, I mean, the look and feel is, you know, every ownership group, they're kind of catered to the demographic that is trying to lease it. But I think what you would see in any of those communities, and, you know, we feature some on our website, and each of these communities has a website as well, is that it is a luxury product. And my experience up until 2020 has been as a for sale builder. And what we've tried to do is bring a lot of the features kind of on that upper end for sale to the rental market. So, you know, compared to some of the homes that are built on the for sale side in this area, the cost per square foot of construction is actually higher for us on the rental side than it is on the for sale side because of the amenities that we're putting into it.
What is that?
It's just some.
No, the
what-
cost per square foot.
You know, it really depends on what the,
Wait, you just said it's more expensive. What,
yeah, it is. I mean, it obviously
it
costs.
says a general, but what is it? What is it, do you think specifically on this project?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question to answer just because your cost per square foot really depends on how many square feet the house is, right? A bigger house is gonna, 3,000 square foot is gonna have a smaller cost per square foot than 1,000. But I'd say,
But you kind of know the houses that are gonna go in here, right?
yeah, I would guess that these ones are direct hard costs would be somewhere around $130 to $150 a square foot. You know, some things that we do that I would imagine is like you saw the 3 cm quartz has been standard in all our homes. You know, fireplaces, stainless steel appliances, really well thought out placements of HVAC and plumbing. You know, we're choosing products that have a longer longevity. One thing that I think is interesting is, and some of you folks probably saw that tour of the community, is the mechanical rooms are accessible from the garage, right? And the reason is so that you can come in and change your furnace filter, drain the water heater, put salt in the water softener without having to disturb the tenant. But what ends up happening is the furnace filters, like I'm guilty of this, I'm sure many of us are, is I don't change mine every month. But in these rental communities, they're changed every 30 days and the tenant has nothing to do with it. So I do feel like we try to design these and build these with longevity and ease of maintenance in mind as well. We have probably north of 300 that we've built from 2020 until now and had great success with it.
So we're still on me, right? Thank you.
Yes, yes, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's cool. This is a discussion. So, I'm curious what Jeremy has to say, how this measures on your Jeremy scale of PUD. But, one of the things so we're redoing our PUD and we're trying not to have our neighborhoods look like Maple Grove. And I think I need some convincing of that on this particular. I think maybe I failed in some of my early assessments of some of these projects. And I kind of want to sharpen the pencil a little bit going forward on how are these distinguishable from any other sort of development. And I like what I'm hearing so far. I'm not 100%. I saw this. I'm like, oh man, there's no space. They're all just smashed together. It's 3.9. It could be 3. And then also for some of you are new here too. The council we've made errors, I think, in not talking or not giving honest feedback in these presentations. So people will come back and then kind of people throw the hammer down on them. So I'd rather talk about the stuff that's irritating not irritating, but maybe things that I'm thinking about on the front end. I kind of would like to see something that makes it more unique. And so the pluses are, it does seem different from a quality standpoint. And I like your amenities. It's almost like I almost think it's almost a requirement in a neighborhood to have some of those things nowadays. So I don't know. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. No, we're about to say something,
I didn't know if Jeremy wanted to go, but.
or
Sure, I'll go.
okay, Jeremy and then Alan.
I would agree. The home styles look good. I like the beautiful pictures that were shown. I'm okay with maintenance street. I think that's acceptable. I struggle with another age restricted community. We seem to have a lot of those coming in. So I'm more interested in seeing communities that are more open. Maybe you end up with a concentration of people in a certain age range, but I don't necessarily want to see that as a mandate outside of where we've already sort of tacitly agreed to that kind of concept.
One quick thing there, is the proposal, it's in the air right now, if it is. Okay. Not right, not.
Oh, it is,
in-
okay.
I think they changed that.
Yes, the initial narrative had that, the updated one did. But sorry, continue.
From a policy standpoint, I don't like single family rental because I think it diminishes opportunity for people to build generational wealth and start to climb that housing ladder. So I would prefer to see single family be for sale rather than for rent. That's apart from any other concerns about, how well can the neighborhood be kept or how will it be maintained 50 years into the future? Even if it's maintained immaculately as it is from day one, it's still removing supply of homes for people to purchase and build their own asset base. I also prefer to see single family homes be owner occupied because of the greater sense of community you can get from that greater sense of attachment. A 65% renewal rate, I think, was cited the last time this came through as a typical number. That probably would have been for multifamily, not single family. Or do you actually have data on a single family neighborhood with a renewal rate?
Yeah, the retention rate, I talk about it anyway, so I should just stop. In the last 3 years, our retention rate at the communities that we had mentioned before are upwards of 60. We've got 70 at one of our Plymouth properties. So, I mean, one of the first residents that moved into the Plymouth property that Tim was mentioning is actually still there and just re-signed for another 4th year. So, I mean, we do get great turnover, great retention there. Turnover for the people that need it and an opportunity there, but we definitely get people that want to stay in that community and desire to be there.
And that was in a multifamily situation or a single family?
Yep, it was single family. home.
That one's single?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I consider it multifamily because that's where I come from. So, but yes, it was a single.
I just want to make sure it's apples to apples.
Yep.
Can I inject one thing? Can you talk about that Plymouth one? Because you mentioned it on the tour. These are much significantly bigger homes than these.
I think they're, those ones have some 3-car garages and they are bigger. But the other units that she's speaking to, the other Beacon Grove units, I would say are fairly comparable, depending on, I would say probably the Edgewater site in Maple Grove would likely, I don't mean this for you, Dave, but likely be fairly, close to that size of units that would be on this site, given the lot sizes are similar.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out though, because this isn't like the only rental product out there. There's some that are significantly more, upscale and larger homes out there for
That's
rent,
very
so.
true. I would say Beacon Ridge is the largest units and they're, those would likely have garages but that was one of the first rental communities in this market. And Nikki can speak to it very well, and him too. They've just learned as they've gone too of how people live, what people want. I gave a great explanation of some of the communities didn't have walk-in showers. The Edgewater community residents wanted walk-in showers. So there's, and on the for sale side, you get that too. But I think there's definitely providing the best resident experience they can.
So are there better examples than, so Beacon Ridge is probably not a good example.
I think Beacon Ridge is a great example of just the product, the quality of product, probably a little bigger. I would say Edgewater on Cook Lake is a great example. Tim, you probably can, and Nikki speak to it better than I can, but lived in this world a little while.
They have a variety. They have 2 stories. They have some zero entry that would qualify as a senior product, slide on grades, some with full basements, some walk-off basements. So they have quite a variety.
One thing to note on the entitlements, both Beth entitled it originally, and then when I was at my previous role, I re-entitled the Edgewater and Cook Lake project. And I think we maybe even talked about it when we had a work session a while back talking about PUDs, long time ago. But one of the interesting things on that project was, and we talked about it on our tour a bit, was that the city of Maple Grove really said, and I know you don't want to look like Maple Grove, but I think one of the unique things was we really want to have a variety of housing within the community, within each community. And they said, we see a need for senior, not senior living necessarily, but somewhere that an empty nester might want to live. So for example, on that site, every lot on the north side of 73rd, south side, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Is all slab on grade, 0 entry, specifically for a senior type product. So, just some interesting things that were, taken into account on that entitlement process from just a product standpoint. And the anti-monotony was, very extensive on that project as well. And I mean, Robert Thomas did an incredible job with how they do their elevations and the different product and materials they use. I think the Edgewater site is a great one to take a look at it as it's evolving too, and how it's built out too. One of the unique things, Tim can, they've done an excellent job at RT of the process, the actual building process. It's very different than a typical for sale project that you drive through. I don't know if any of you have driven through the Edgewater project, but you drive through and they've dug what, 50 basements in.
Started September 21st last year with our first foundation. And we got 50 of them in before December. We have 50 basements. I think we're creating our 22nd house right now. We've been bringing through the winter. And we plan on getting steel sodded landscape done in October, late October, November of 23. So it's about a 13-14 month process for having that.
Just the actual development process is different than your typical for sale. You'll see things sodded and landscaped and things get done. It's a different process and, rock construction entrances. And as a developer, I love driving through those sites because they're rock construction entrances, sweet streets, just very professionally maintained project site that RT does an excellent job on.
You're not waiting for a house to sell and a homeowner to come in and pick a particular lot. That's where you're gonna build that house on that lot. And so there's a lot of efficiencies that can be found as far as building down a straight line, and the livability for the tenants as we're under construction, something we consider, school buses, traffic, all that stuff. And then it's fun for us as builders because it's the same vendors that we use on our for sale site. It's a lot of the same products, but it's a totally different process. And it's just because it's not driven by waiting for a particular family, particular homeowner to come hit a particular lot, and a particular product.
For reference, Tim and I have worked together on many of these projects as a management company and a development company. And we have a good relationship where we can say, or our managers can say, hey, this is something that's causing an issue for the people who are living here right now while we're under development. And within a few days, Tim and his team have corrected that problem. So that relationship is a big part of it. We want to make sure that we're well servicing the people that already live there while we're preparing for the people that are moving.
And additionally, people that don't live in that community but live nearby, we try to plan that out very carefully. We try to be very respectful of parking on one side of the street, construction hours. We really try to think those things. And a lot of that comes from building 250 single family for sale homes a year prior to this. Our company, we know what that's like. We know what those concerns are. We know that it's a pain when there's construction going on and people are living in that community or living near the communities. We try to be really sensitive and aware of that stuff. It's not perfect, obviously. We do have some nail guns going and generating fun, but it's something that we're very aware of and take this.
We certainly had our fair share of complaints on construction process issues. So
No, the only other comment I would make, and I'm a builder.
If you could come up to the mic.
The only comment I would make, like I said, we kind of got pulled into this because it's where the market took us, and we still build 250 single family homes a year. And when we started this, I kind of wondered like, who are these people that are paying, you know, this much money a month to rent, right? Like, why are they doing this? And I had some similar thoughts with like the generational wealth and does this really like, does this make sense? But, you know, having built 5, 6 of these communities and interacted with a lot of these tenants, they're choosing to rent. It's not that they can't afford to buy. It's a lifestyle choice. It's not that, they want to rent and they want to have the kind of resort at home lifestyle. They want the flexibility of maybe having the cabin up north and the place in Scottsdale, and they can jump between the two. And they want a place where the grandkids and the family can come over and go swimming. But from my observations of our, you know, typical tenant is they're choosing to make that choice. And it's not that they're forced to, it's not that they can't afford to buy a home. They want the flexibility of renting.
Could you talk to some of the rents? What we're talking about as far as rental prices?
So,
Come up. You come up just so we can get it on the Zoom call.
yeah. So depending on, the style of home that we have and, the different locations in the community, they can range anywhere, are smaller bungalow style, zero entry, homes can be a little bit less, or 2-bedroom, 2-bath, you know, less square footage. Those can be in the, you know, mid to high 2000s to the low 3000s. Some of our larger 5 bedrooms, if they have them, Edgewater doesn't, but some of our other communities that have the 5 bedrooms can go into the mid 4000s. So it's just a dependent on what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All that said, if these were homes for purchase, I could support it if the new standard for PUD that we're gonna be talking about next was satisfied. Which would mean more open space. With the trail on the north side, I think that's a really good opportunity to capitalize on having a broader swath of open space and provide a healthy buffer between this neighborhood and the development that's currently to the north. I think with this lot width combination and the way that we have constructed the draft, we'd be looking at about a 15% buildable area open space requirement under the new standard. So there'd be a pretty significant open space up there that would, I think, be a really good amenity for the neighborhood. That really would also help to satisfy the city's vision around preserving rural character and open space and the natural environment in an accessible way that residents can benefit from. You know, overall with the lot widths, I think we set up that ordinance the way that it's drafted to allow for developments of, you know, this kind of lot width, but the draft ordinance calls for minimum side yard separations of 15 feet, not 10. So that would be another adjustment that we would need to see. The other amenities that you're offering, I think they sound good. And again, if it was a HOA maintained sort of rental lifestyle, but not rental, I think all those would be great amenities that would be wonderful for the neighborhood itself. As I said, as long as it wasn't a rental focused business model, I think I could support it, provided the open space and other requirements that we talk about would be satisfied with modifications. We said it before, I would treat the environmental cleanup not necessarily as a benefit to be weighed with the PUD. I think it's a base requirement. I'm happy to see it happen when and if it happens. But because it can be left intact and it's not apparently considered to be a significant issue, I wouldn't see it as a benefit to the city to have it resolved sooner rather than later. I think that's it for me.
I'm the exactly opposite of you, I think. I would not be in favor of this in a single family.
You mean if it was for purchase, you only want it rental?
Well, if this came in as a single family home thing, I would not like.
They would have to make modifications, I think.
Yeah, like
we
yeah.
talked about.
Yeah. It's just interesting because we just gave them opposite feedback. Good luck with that.
One, and I'll make it even a little bit more confusing because I think I'm somewhere in between the two of you. I think I would prefer the single family, the owner occupied. If we were to go the rental route, I think some of the changes just to the site itself, regardless of the ownership style, would be trying to mix in some bigger lot sizes with those 50 and 44s, with the density being 3.9, pre-development probably pushing 4 in all likelihood with post-development density.
Yeah, so 3.9, so there may be some wiggle room to take out some lots. or
Yeah.
to Make some slightly bigger lots.
Oh yeah, if we mixed in some bigger lots in there, I think that would help a bit. One issue that was in the staff report a bit, I don't think we've touched on, is the access. It's kind of shown on the semi little ghost plat there in the corner, on the property to the east. But I think if that's not going to be part of it, the northwest cul-de-sac there would have to be a second full, not just an emergency vehicle access like was proposed, I think in one of the narratives, but I think it would need to be a full access. And I think everything else we've kind of touched on in terms of, I have a little bit of hesitation, not knowing. We talked a lot about what the demographic is, and that's how the neighborhood would be tailored towards in terms of what amenities there are, what housing choices there are potentially, stuff like that. And not knowing that makes me a little nervous. But potentially it's something that we'd see in the future before we'd make some decision. Yeah, like, right. But I think those are the major issues for the site specifically. And then I echo kind of what some of what Jeremy said with alternatively to some of the bigger lots, maybe you're looking at more open space, more contiguous open space, and maybe below that trail or something like that. So all I have.
Yeah, I always love to see bigger lots, especially as a transition to the property to the east. We don't know what that would develop, but I think bigger lots and bigger separation between homes would be beneficial to if that develops into single family homes. As a non-age restricted community, I kind of worry about the lack of amenities for kids if this attracts some. We got this, that's like crossings. Don't know what else is going around. There's no park area in here. It's just what this private amenity center is. So I would love to see something like that. I agree with you on the PUD benefits, which you've mentioned about the cleanup and I didn't really even find much benefit in talking about the transition to Bass Lake Crossings with a landscape boulevard. The only real benefit that popped to me was the paved trail, to be honest with you. So. And then I would love to see 50 being a minimum if that's what we end up going to, but. I mean, actually going and visiting you're in Edgewood, the 10-foot finally just popped to me. It's like, that's just too close for me. I don't know how we ever agreed to that. But
5 and 5.
5 and 5, yeah. I know, but if I was to do it again, I don't even know if I voted on that one, to be honest with you, but I probably wouldn't go down that route. It's just,
I don't like it, that fast like crossing. It's too close.
I don't see this, I don't want to see this community, we have an opportunity to have diverse, but I see what we're going to is like smaller, tighter vinyl. And it's becoming very, homogeneous, there's no. It's all the same, wherever you go, to your point, what's gonna differentiate it? See anything. So, yeah.
The problem of being in. It's a larger conversation, like the problem with being in the MUSA. Is you have certain guidelines that you have to follow.
Right.
So it's on, I was thinking on the way. I was thinking today, like we should just stop the MUSA where it is so we can. And not have these uninteresting developments, but not to say it's, I mean, they all kind of look the same. That's just what you end up with inside the MUSA. You
Right.
can't get too far out of like.
Yeah.
Similar to all the other developments, because they're restricted by the per acre rule.
Right. One thing I think staff mentioned in the report, but we have to think about is, we go to a rental ordinance. Right? We have to do an exemption for this. You've got more and more, I think you pointed out, more and more national builders getting into residential rentals, right? So what do we do if all of a sudden we have a flood of national builders wanting to build in this area or rental units?
If we exempted it, would that includes, we talked a bit about some of the provisions with overall like rental density and number of units, number of licenses. So if we exempted it, are we exempting it from all of that as well? So it won't count towards.
So if we were to exempt, we wouldn't exempt it from the rental ordinance. We would exempt it from the caps, so the density cap and the license cap. And we could write we haven't adopted the rental ordinance. I have some time to figure out how we could do it in a way that doesn't necessarily take your discretion in a future incident. That's why I try to keep things open-ended sometimes so that you guys can have discretion and you can, because the city can learn, the city can approve something and decide they don't like that and they don't have to approve it. That's the same thing with variances. We can approve a variance, realize that was a mistake after learned practice and not approve the same variance again. It'd be similar. It's just an exemption from it. And I think it's something that we're seeing too much of. We would still have the ability to turn something down in the future without necessarily turning this down now. I'm not gonna say I don't have anybody who has talked to me about rental communities, but at this point, most everything that's coming in is for sale. This really the truck development is the one that has really been talking about potential rental communities. So it's been this site, Cook Lake Highlands, and I believe they're moving away from that. And so this is really the only site right now that has that for rent component that under consideration, obviously, so. that
Hope
depends on-
did.
What?
Hope did,
Hope
but in
did.
conversation, they
Yeah.
decided to.
And they've moved away from that
modify
too.
that.
So if this would be something you wanted to pursue, and again, today's non-binding, but if the general direction is it's something you're open to considering, we have some time to work through the rental draft. And I think you would be able to have this be the test case and kind of see what happens.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just a couple of more things. Great conversation. I hope it helps you guys a lot. I still agreed with our comments, and I think Alan, you said it last, was that 50 foot is the minimum. That's in my mind. I'm thinking even further down the road, and tell me if I'm out of line, guys. The property to the east of this is even lesser density. It's up next to is it the same density as this?
Same density in the guide
So
plan, but it has.
my issues
more from
and
it.
such is the same. We're running into Bellwether. We build part of Bellwether and then we build Amberley and Bellwether, and everybody's upset that all the construction is driving through the neighborhood and stuff. We're driving through this neighborhood when the eastern property develops. We're driving through the folks from M&I and south. I need everybody, and I want everybody to understand that your property is there. The land is probably going to develop to the east. The land is probably going to develop to the west. We've got neighbors to the south that are already thinking something else. And as those changes come on Cook Lake Highlands and stuff, it's gonna stir up a whole bunch of things, no matter what anybody says. I'm looking at even a little bit bigger picture, and I think I agree with Jeremy on the build for sale. I'd love to see that. I'd love to ask the question, how much more money do we get in property tax if this were all rental? Then
I don't think you can do that.
I know I can't, but I'm asking those kind of things on,
It wouldn't be homesteaded, so.
it wouldn't be
a higher
homesteaded, so it'd be a higher tax rate. I'm making some assumptions. I'm jumping all over. I love everything you guys have said. I love the product as far as I wish I had all of my maintenance in the garage. I am one that does change my fuel air filter every month. What a pain, but I live in the country in an old farmhouse, so that's me. I'm said it all along. I'd love to see bigger yards. I'd love to not compress people into a park. Sorry, Jessica. I'd like our parks to be special, not the norm, if that's a good way of saying it. I know Cook Lake and everything out here, if I remember right, Jessica, Parks had no interest in park or anything out here, I think is what was said, or was there a neighborhood thing planned out this way?
So I think
Asking.
Cook Lake wasn't the plan to accept an area, but it was a natural area. Or was that?
It was a combo.
Yeah, it wasn't a,
This issue with the ravine and.
you know, so I mean, it wasn't a park, and it just, we can't keep asking for parks in every little neighborhood, so.
To your point, we have the park plan outlined that we were anticipating as part of the 2040.
I just,
accepted.
again, it's a concept, I'm giving my input. I'd like to see wider streets for our public works folks. I know they hate dodging mailboxes, sidewalks, all of those things. I think this street width is probably the same as the property to the south.
There is a park on the west side of Maple Hill Road. Neighborhood Park is on the comp plan. So eventually, the intent is there would be something, it would.
Closer to our downtown.
Closer
I
to
mean, this
downtown.
being our downtown and this being, yeah. So I mean, I think we've got trails in through there. Thank you for pulling that up, Jeremy. Even the bigger picture is all of the neighbors around it. The community to the north. A lot of things to think about here, so.
I would, on kind of some of that, we were talking about with the property specifically to the east that will develop at some point potentially. Kind of regardless of what actually goes here, like to see some sort of notice. I don't know how we could enforce that or do that where, it's being presented to the people that are either buying or renting or whatever these homes that. Hey, this property by you is undeveloped, will develop. And also, given the layout, the only way to get in there for construction traffic is gonna be through that.
We could have the Lions make a sign.
There you go.
And one of the things that we did do with, when we did the, weather, the declarations, homeowners association declarations did note in particular the ones, nearest
Yeah,
Nelson.
but none of them read it.
Yes.
I'm just,
Because the challenge of getting.
if I upset,
Just that.
if I upset anybody, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not.
No, I think
You can't change ignorance. You're moving into a community that this area is going to develop. Don't come here and build a house and then all of a sudden say that farmer can't sell. I want to see cornfields for the rest of my life while I'm here. Come on, folks. Well, I won't say anymore.
I will say that we've learned as we've developed as well, that at the end of these streets that would abut the Lure property, we would put up.
Sign.
Develop, we would put up the signage that these are going to be.
This will be a road.
Yes, this will be a road and will connect, and so
My concern is more so, like, that's definitely one of them, but it's more so. Construction access, there's not really a way around it.
There's no way
We're gonna
around.
have to go through this.
Know when something's
Right.
gonna come in and have the availability.
Well, you know, they're gonna go through Fur Lane, is where they're gonna go.
And then we've got to hold on this thing.
But
Oh, but to have access.
no, yeah, it's,
They're all public roads. And I say that to people and they look at me like, well, you're part of the city. I'm part of the city. They're public roads. The folks have a right to have access, so.
I've thought about property based, actually even think about, it. So we have a concept on it.
Yeah,
Just so you know, we're thinking about, it. That's what I'm saying, and so I think this does give alternative routes in and out. So it's not, you're not just going down per lane to get to the site. This is gonna be Maple Hill. Maple Hill's gonna be some degree improved. So, and that is a big benefit, because it does not just benefit the site.
Let me,
So-
can I ask you a question after your comment? So the property to the east, you've laid it out what it potentially could be. Does it look like this with 50-foot lots? Okay,
And I think I mentioned that to you, that I showed you Edgewater, and Edgewater had 50% open space.
Yeah.
It's in the shoreline. And it's not mixed residential, it's low density.
Yep.
In the shoreline.
so one of my comments would be is in talking about transition in a map like this, the homes to the, on the east side of this development, in my mind, should transition bigger. The lots should be bigger, the homes should be bigger, so that area, you know, it blends better.
It does blend, it may not blend the way we're describing it, but it does blend, so, but we're hearing you, I hear you about your large lots and.
Yeah, because if I look at this and I think of this in Bass Lake, in my mind, that boxes that property into something similar, which I don't want to box somebody into a.
And shoreline, it does give me all.
And just to add to that, I think Beth is specifically talking about a tiered approach to the
Yes.
shoreland overlay. Our shoreland overlay is outdated, and so they're going by an updated shoreland overlay. That's now the new model that staff has. It's been on our list to update for a few years now to this new model. So just to clarify, it is a slightly different model than what's in our code, but it is to the updated model that is now
And
best
it's
practice.
recommended to us by staff. So we actually asked. And I think that was their recommendation. It's really, which is what we did. That is absolutely.
Can you share that tier with us?
Yeah, it'd be good to
I'd
see.
be happy to. I can send that. I know Kendra knows a little bit more about it than I do, so I will, she's on vacation, but I'll touch base with her on Monday and I can get that sent over to you.
Thank you. Any other big items? We can touched access, touched lot sizes, open space. I get some varied opinions on the rental versus owner occupied aspect.
none of that. The home that's surrounded by this, who's living there?
It was there.
Yep. But that is going to, and. Okay, how big a parcel is that? Okay.
So do you have an opinion so they can have Dave, Jeremy and I are opposites on the rental. I think we should clarify, at least as the council sits, for their own sake on what they might potentially do, whether we're okay with rental or whether we're not okay with rental, just so.
Yeah.
We should have that specific feedback for them.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm not in favor of rental, kind of to your point of what you were saying about this particular. If it's like what we've seen and been shown some of the images. I could probably get on board with that if we were confident we had the protections that we discussed earlier about the HOA, how the HOA documents are drafted and how it would work if units sold in the future and all of that. If we were confident that was sound and that we'd actually be getting this management, this quality, I
want to
Probably get
clarify my own position, which is if given the choices, this specific development as a rental or a owner, I would go rental. That doesn't mean like I'm gonna I'm gonna advocate for it. So just to,
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply otherwise.
Yeah. you didn't.
John, can you explain your thought process there? Like what, because you've been against rental in past discussions. What's
So,
different
yeah,
about this case?
if given a choice around, this particular home set compared to rentals, let me think about that.
Is the answer up there?
Yeah, I'm just I'm trying to,
You can look up there. I'm sorry.
when you use this one.
I
part of
do
your-
it all the
Part of your
time.
brain, your eyes.
I always do it too.
He's trying to be creative. Let him be.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather have the community have covenants that are within an HOA. Than not. That's part of it. There's a little bit more. A more desired outcome of home maintenance, lawn care, that kind of stuff. With the community like this, in a rental product than a purchase product.
But in theory, you could do it either way. I mean, you could have a management company and an HOA provide the same services and charge an HOA fee instead of having it be a rental management company doing it. I see it as separate. I think the business model is separate from the level of service that's provided to the resident.
So then you get into you force owner of their house to use
Just like townhomes.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But I would have some problems with that.
Force when you purchase it though.
Right. You're opting in when you buy.
Yeah, I guess, right. I guess we could write it that way. I
mean, we used to be a townhome family for a year or two. And that's how it ran. Like you buy the townhome and you have to sign the documents, and then they have an HOA and the HOA picks a contractor to do the maintenance and they take care of the snow plowing and the lawn cutting. And
yeah.
you can plant flowers in your flower beds or whatever if you want to, but it's part of the package that comes with that home style.
Just the difference on the townhome, maintenance for sale townhome maintenance from a purpose-built, single-family detached rental. You have, you would have similar vendors doing the lawn care and the snow removal, but you don't have somebody doing exterior maintenance, interior maintenance. It is very different, and I've done many, what we would consider to be detached villa HOA maintained communities, very similar to what MI's Vast Lake Crossing is. That HOA would have architectural requirements, I would assume, I'm not sure, but many of them do. But then they have snow removal and lawn care. The lawn care is probably even different than what a rental lawn care would be. I would think the rental would tend to be a little more service. But you don't have exterior maintenance, interior maintenance. Typically, that would be, if you have exterior maintenance, would be a CIC type community, so not a detached, single family platted community. I think it's just mostly, the expense would be very high for a single family exterior maintenance to be maintained by an HOA on a for sale.
I think in
Yeah.
20 years, a low end purchase community compared to a mid to high end rental community would look better, be nicer.
Say that again, sorry.
So in 20 years, I think if given the choice, a mid to high end rental community will look nice. Be have the town be better.
So like if it ages for 30 years.
Yeah,
it'll- In 30 years' time, a property that started now, if it's rented, will look better than one that started now. Is that?
I think what he's saying is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it's rented and it's in this kind of price range of this management, this level of service,
Mhm.
not just rental in general, but this,
this specific
Specific,
tier of
yes.
rental.
yeah, will look better, he thinks, in 30 years than the same development if it were single family owner occupied.
That's if it's maintained as rental.
Right.
Well, that's what we're talking about, the covenants,
Right.
how tight those can be.
We can get confident in that. I think I can get on board with that aspect of it. Given that we see some of the other changes like the second access to the north there, if the eastern property is not part of this, which it's not currently. And some of the bigger lot sizes mixed in, some additional space between homes, more than the 5 and 5, which kind of goes with the lot sizes. Then I think I could potentially get on board with this in this specific instance.
Abstain from that vote.
You don't have to.
Because, I mean, I think there's a lot of questions around the rental and how our ordinance laid out the exemption and the development of more builders potentially coming to us with similar things.
That would be a concern.
I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm not saying I'm for it, I'm just saying I have concerns. in Many different aspects of it. But I think we talked about a lot of it tonight, so it's the applicant to
Yeah.
figure out how they want to present the next phase.
I'll talk on the rental side.
Oh, sure.
I had 2 months ago, I would say absolutely not rentals and stuff. I like the idea. It'd be nice if it could be transparent. Nobody knows it's rentals other than the owners. Or they own their property. A lot of people have had conversations with me about that, so I changed my thoughts and minds and stuff. I'd like bigger yards, those kind of things, but is rental or home ownership a big deal to me? Not as much as it was, so I'm open to listen.
We've done that a bunch. Appreciate it, guys. Hey, we'll give everyone a minute to clear out in case they want, and then we'll go on to 8B. Does anyone need a break or a couple of you just took one?
Took mine already.
Is there any chance? We can't change the order of the meeting, can we, at this?
We can amend the agenda, yeah,
I think you could do that.
by motion.
Cause are you guys here for the? Oh, I'm
Nice
sorry.
to meet you in person.
Yeah, good to meet you. We didn't
Okay,
Hey, you know, that's-
introduce
that's good
her or
experience.
anything.
She'll be no stranger to long meetings.
Yeah.
And your administration assistant is sitting next to you?
yes. Like I've never seen those people before. I thought you. I thought you might have been the photographers of 9E.
What did you want to amend? Jen?
I would think this next conversation is gonna be a long one. I almost think we should just pull 9E up.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, what?
Did you say pull 9E off?
No, she's
No, up.
talking trash to Kevin
Did you specifically want to move 9E up
to, yes,
next? Okay, so to move 9E next, we'll move the
8B.
8B to trying to think how to describe this in words.
It'd be the new 8C.
I want to do 9E, the rest of 9, and then
We do,
8B.
can we do 9C too?
What's, okay, your item?
Let's do 9C too with that.
We'll fly through that though. And if Natalie, if you need the leave, we'll figure it out on the fly. You can call in or something.
For EP.
Worst case, but I think we can fly through the rest of this real quick. It won't
Okay.
be too much of a delay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to adjust the schedules that move 90 next. We'll do the rest of 9, then 8B, then pick up with staff reports, closed session, city council and adjournment.
So we'll go through 9 and then go back to 8B.
Correct. We'll do 9E, then the rest of 9. then
Okay.
8B. Yep. Okay, do you have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, on to 9E first.
Ready, go.
Well, first of all, thank you for moving it up. I really do appreciate that. Sorry, Natalie. Back on February 23rd, you guys had asked staff to look into alternative options other than a direct financial donation from the photographers. I had reached out to them directly and they said that they would be willing to offer free shipping to the parents in the programs, and that would take about $3.50 off of their order. The company noted that this would likely be higher on average than the return that would have otherwise come in anyways. So all in all, it seems like it would work well. And if you guys would like to not accept the 2022 check, we can always send it back to them. I'm sure they would be like, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How do you arrive at the decision of who gets to be the photographer for the association?
So I actually researched quite a few
That's what
different
I'm
companies.
asking.
Uh-huh. So I researched a few
Shine
different
bright.
companies and a lot of them actually do the donation back. It's very common. And I based it on that part. I based it on the cost of their actual items themselves. And on reviews, because in the past we did use a different photography company and we had a bit of a time with them, and we've had really, really good luck with these people. They seem to be on time. Their orders seem to come at a reasonable time. I know there was some concern with like a preferred vendor. If they were a preferred vendor, it's because we get good service from them. That would be, if the service started to decline, I would immediately look elsewhere, because photography is one of those things that is very hit or miss, I found. So
So I just want to, what was your vernacular you used about whether, what was the decision making based on, what was it?
I based it on
No, you, after that, you said there were some concerns about,
a preferred vendor.
yeah. they
That
are-
was, I'm pretty sure that's a direct quote from them.
Yes, so they became a preferred vendor, which they are a preferred vendor, based on the research that you did. Which is good. I would just rather have, can I speak?
Yeah.
The calculus in, it should never include a donation back to the city, I don't think. On how we make our vendor choices. In this case, it should go to, it just looks bad. So I would just rather have it go to the families that are involved to have them get a better deal.
And to be fair, the way that we were doing it would have benefited all of the families in the program, and the way that we're doing it now only benefits the people who actively order. So that's the downfall of this.
Well, that's the
How would it-
upside too, though.
How would it benefit? Oh, yeah, I see.
The
Some
donation
people
goes
that
into the
don't order
program.
pictures.
Cause you
But
can use
if-
it against fees or whatnot.
Yeah, but if it's their money, like, we don't have to have the benefit be social if they're getting it this, if they're spending a certain amount of money. And instead of going to everybody, it just goes to
Right.
people who spent a certain amount of money, then actually. Other people shouldn't benefit from a discount of, like, they didn't spend any money, why should they get some costs knocked off anyways?
It just has a weird look in my mind.
So are we all comfortable with the alternative solution of the 350 off of shipping for?
So the staff recommendation was to decline the check from the 2022 season and proceed with accepting free shipping.
So I'll make a motion to do.
Got a motion? Second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. So 4 ayes and an abstention from Nichols. Keep me on my toes.
Thanks, Jess, for all the work you did in the background and actually investigating this. Nice to know that's going on.
I will do whatever you guys ask.
Thanks.
For dinner. You're welcome. Anyone else need a protein bar from my desk?
Okay, let's go to 9A. See how we can power through 9, the 2023 A bonds discussion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we do a motion, just to clarify, would that be motion to direct staff to finalize the sale of bonds in the amount of $27,130,000?
Yes, we've went over this.
We
a
beat it
lot.
up. I would second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think it was everyone. 9B cropland rental. Jess, do you wanna?
Yeah. Do just a brief,
Can I make a motion?
Sure. All right. Yep.
To go with the reinstating the original agreement.
Okay, so that would be a motion to, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-22, approving reinstatement of the 2022 and 2023 cropland rental agreement with Mr. Lure. So, John, wanna make the motion?
Yeah, I did make that.
Motion, second discussion.
And just real quick, we're still paying the farmer or the taxes that the Hennepin County deal, that's not written in here. Is that something else?
yes, we
Okay.
are, we're gonna pay, the city is gonna pay the taxes and so this was only for the north.
Okay.
north Parcel, the other parcel, only the 1-year contract, and we'll be continuing to the 1-year contract as we do have.
Okay.
The park master plan, we will be under construction next year.
And that makes Hennepin County happy, or are they gonna find something else wrong with? what
They're
we're-
never happy.
We'll find.
They're never happy, so
We hope not.
why ask the question?
There's always.
Oh, yeah, so there's
Always hope.
another group in town, that's a charitable organization, I'm forgetting the name right now, but one of the big things they do is try to get people involved in farming.
Yep.
New generation people involved in farming, and they express some interest if one of those properties becomes available in the future and leasing it out from the city and using it for some of their
Charitable purposes.
yeah, exactly. And I wonder if,
Be something that we could do. That's
That'd be great.
something
Next
we'd
year.
like to
Right.
explore.
So what is that, like community garden type stuff they're doing?
I'd have to get more information from them, but technically would help with some of the tax, the, how it's taxed, yeah, charity, so.
So it's all about the.
Well, you'd have to find out if the people that are learning to farm off it aren't taking their produce and selling it at the
Yeah,
farmers.
there'd be a lot more vetting. It'd be for like. future
Every
year,
kid
but-
between 10 and 12 that lives in Corcoran will be invited to drive a combine.
There you go.
all Over the property.
Yeah.
Unsupervised.
Yeah.
But yeah. so
Anyhow,
something to consider.
I wanted to ask the question, and I think we beat it up. You've got
I do have one actually.
motion in a second.
One other little question. I think I mentioned in the staff report that, we do anticipate that valuation could go up in future years, so that tax amount could go up in the future. years.
Yes, and we have.
Do we have the ability to challenge an assessment just like a homeowner does on city property?
It's not necessarily the value. My understanding for this type, it's not.
It's the
value,
potential income, right?
the Potential income, not necessarily the valuation of the property.
Okay, I thought it was
It's.
related. Weirdly, it's confusing.
So if we have a drought, no crop is made, nothing's done, we're still paying taxes on potential income, even though the farmer didn't make anything.
It's a really good question.
Right. Part of the challenge of living
Okay.
there.
I have the assessor's contact info in my car. I can give it to you and you can send him an email about it.
Maybe we'll plant edible weeds.
There
I
you go.
just, what a silly thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, we did have a motion. We did have a motion and a second, and that was the discussion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 9C, commission appointments. Alan and I were the subcommittee. We had a real easy job this time. There were no Parks and Trails applicants, so I think we're gonna keep that open. Potentially, yeah. Or at least. If I'm gonna be part of this subcommittee, like usual, I'd have to be till the end of April or so. When does Parks and Trails meet next?
The next one, trails and they would be that.
Okay, well, they could survive one meeting with 6 members, because they've got a little more anyway. But then on planning, we did have one applicant that I think we're both recommending for appointment, which is Lindsay Jacobs. And I think it was in the packets. You guys have all seen her application and resume, and I think a strong candidate. We're excited to have you. So I don't know if anyone has questions for Lindsay or anything, but that's.
I didn't read enough. Any relation?
Yes,
Same property owner?
yes,
What is it?
Do I need to
Last name.
apologize
Jacobs.
to your dad or to you?
Oh,
Not that you know of.
Great.
You got some great neighbors over there, guys. If you need any dish on Charlie, let me know. I can give it to you. Need anything on your dad, let me know. I can give it to you.
Well,
We talked with her and I talked with her
Yeah.
today, right?
perfect.
Good job, you guys.
good to have you.
Way to go.
Excited, and we'll reach out with
Yeah, I'll read.
basic info, Natalie probably, yeah. And then the next meeting is on April 6th, which you already knew us, so perfect. I will go ahead and make a motion to appoint Lindsay Jacobs to the Planning Commission for a term ending, I believe, February 28th, 2026.
Second.
Any further discussion?
As long as your dad has no input, I'll approve.
I don't know, he said he's gonna come back down, he promised us that.
Sorry to make light of it. I miss your dad.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a Diet Coke in her hand right
Not
now,
yet.
so.
Not yet.
At the hat, yeah.
Just independent thinker.
Yeah.
So yeah, motion second. Now 1 second, any further discussion? We're good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome and thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you making it out here. 9D, we had a quick overview. I think it was requested by Counselor Bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? I thought it was Nichols.
We asked for, I forget who it was.
Maybe a few people. But
We
on,
wanted a Pareto and you gave us a Pareto, so thank you.
That's outline the variety of different costs, whether with city, or if they were city general funds or construction funds or the city other fund is generally water and sewer related. Would be that either general fund, water and sewer, construction funds that are related to a particular project or escrow. As you can see, a majority of, besides some of the water planning, a majority of most of these groups. Really just wanted to get some feedback from council if we do want, with this information, do we want to look at doing it on the street? We want to take some time to think about. If there's any other additional information that will help to make that. Or look at what that schedule looks like, so.
any thoughts on that? Michael? I think given some of the time considerations of how thorough of a process that is, it was probably ambitious to think we were gonna do multiple of them in a year. So I don't know if we want to look at, and don't necessarily have to decide this tonight, but more of a spread out policy where we're just doing one of them every few years, or.
I would suggest we start with the tallest Pareto bar. And see how much effort goes into it and what benefits result. And then determine whether we want to do a second one next year versus the year following.
Okay. Maybe something for staff to bring back to us could we get some ballpark dates and estimates for like how long that process would take, what it would involve? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
Costs related to city staff time.
Perfect. That's what we could just get brought back.
We comfortable with that being April, the 13th meeting is really big.
You won't be there anyway.
Yeah,
So maybe
the 27th.
either the 27th or the
Yes.
first meeting.
Yeah.
I forgot to bring this up last meeting, but since we're on this topic. Could we get some better itemization on some of these? On some of the billing?
Sure, what do you want specific?
Yeah, I'll need to get that back to you. I totally whiffed on it last
No worries.
meeting. I want to talk about it. I'll talk about it next meeting during.
Sounds good. Perfect.
Is the legal costs listed here? Does that include the criminal? Or is that civil stuff related to city business? I mean, that would probably be good to know because you'd almost have to take that out of the picture.
Of the general funds, that's a good question. I have that. Ask maybe, there may be some code enforcement items in.
Maybe if we could get that one broken
We
down.
could
Helpful.
figure out if that was.
Otherwise, in general, I think it made sense why Wang Stantec costs has gone up substantially because we've had several major projects that we've initiated, so that makes sense to me. And the other ones have stayed relatively in line with what I'd expect for a, what we're seeing growth wise and more project wise. But yeah, it'd be great to, John, if you have any stuff at the next meeting or future.
Yeah, we'll talk about it then.
Perfect. Sounds good.
What was the distinction between general fund and other fund?
The other fund, would be, city sewer and water.
Oh. Okay.
This is a big, especially the big line item. Water supply.
Yeah.
Right, it's fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, I told you we'd do that quick. That was 15 minutes.
Great, thank you.
So on to 8B, which is, do you have anyone online?
We have 9 participants.
Okay, great. Want to make sure we did have a public comment opportunity at the beginning. Let's just double check, have a public comment opportunity for 8B, since we kind of agenda, just to make sure if there's anyone that wanted to comment on that, and then we'll go into it.
Press *9. Please click reactions and raise your hand if you're looking at on the electronic device. Mayor and council at this time, there's no one raising their hand. I'm checking there's a chat. There's some comments that were made related to right.
Okay, gotcha. Sounds good. Then we'll go into the discussion on 8B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this is the continuation of our planned unit development zoning ordinance amendment discussion. Just a very quick recap of the staff report, the updates since our last meeting together. We do now have the table that correlates the proposed minimum lot width with the required amount of open space. The neighborhood meeting language has now been changed so that it occurs after concept plan, but before submittal of the preliminary application. Next slide. The PUD points draft system has been adjusted with a new category for lot size variety to encourage some larger lot sizes. So 5 points awarded for every 10% of lots that exceed a lot width of 65 feet or a lot area of 7,500 square feet for the 50-point maximum. Additionally, I added verbiage to the rural structures category that basically says when the structure becomes structurally or financially unfeasible to maintain for HOAs and home buyers, they could replace it with a small monument such as a plaque or a bench or something to that extent to satisfy the intent of the approval. Next slide. Remaining discussion points, the Planning Commission was asked 4 questions specifically focused on the proposed points categories. due to a unexpected lack of quorum at the last meeting, we did not actually get to hold the meeting, but commissioners individually emailed me their feedback on those questions to try to keep things moving forward and shape our discussion here tonight. So I didn't want to try to even begin to summarize further what I summarized in the staff report for those four questions. But there was additional feedback such as the concerns of the PUD process, increasing housing costs, maintenance of open space and preservation areas, potential that the point system could force or favor an HOA. Are there too many categories? The simultaneous rigidness and subjectivity of the point system, and potential legal challenges of denying a PUD application. And so I just wanted to make sure that all those were called out, and then we can discuss the other four questions here tonight. Next slide. So there's been a lot of back and forth about what the standards would do to council discretion in approving or denying a PUD. I did reach out to Maple Grove, and their staff confirmed that their city council has yet to deny a PUD that meets their points threshold. So they have it written a little differently. It doesn't specifically say in the code that it's for staff analysis. But we don't really have an example to point to say that it will hold in court. So I did reach out to the city attorney, and his initial thoughts on the situation is that there would be potential for an applicant to point to the staff analysis of points to argue why the application was wrongfully denied. So as a way to be able to defend such a denial, the council would need to provide clear findings of fact as to why the staff analysis is wrong, or what other findings of fact that they are looking at that justify the denial, which are not captured by the point system. So the council will really need to decide if the goal is to create standards for the review and an approval of denial of a PUD, then the point system could make sense. If the goal is to retain council discretion, I believe the better way to incorporate all the work that we've been putting into this for the last year would be to move away from a defined threshold, use the categories that we've come up with to create an unweighted list of desired public benefits and development traits that would still be used to guide our negotiations of PUDs. But without that defined threshold, then it should retain your discretion. So next slide. So next steps, council should direct staff on any changes that should be made to the draft based on the planning commission feedback. If changes are minimal, we can schedule a public hearing for the May planning commission meeting. And if there are significant changes, we should discuss a timeline tonight for expectations.
Okay, thank you. A lot of places to start on this one. We want to start on kind of the big issue, I think, is implementing this as a city code update, or the alternative that Natalie talked about of having them be categories basically based on the concern of that was raised by the city attorney and by staff on the defensibility of that.
And to be clear, we could still update the code to have those categories codified, just not having it be weighted.
Gotcha.
And just having it listed. We kind of have that in our Northeast district where we have desired resilience strategies that we wanted to see, and each one had to choose 3. I would recommend moving away from a defined minimum, because I think, again, then we're setting a standard again, if that's the concern. But having those listed, I think that would be helpful with negotiations.
And then a potential route that could happen would be, even though we're not defining that, you have to meet these 3 minimums or these 3 items, whatever, we could still say, okay, if an application came in that didn't meet many or any of those, that's a reason for denial.
Exactly.
Yeah, thoughts on that?
Yes, I'm kind of seeing it from the perspective of if something meets the expectations in the code, and I have a different reason to reject, it wouldn't be difficult to articulate what that reason is. And I see sufficient value in having it be firm that I wouldn't want to make it less concrete than the threshold approach would give us. Can anybody conceive of a situation where a project would include the amenities that would get to the threshold, but there would be some other deal breaker that would make you reluctant to approve it.
Sure, I can conceive of one. I mean, like hypothetically.
Probably had them in the past, but I don't name. I don't like naming projects that have been denied in the past, and talking about them. 'Cause I feel that it has potential to open us up to something. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times where things have looked good at first glance, right? Especially like in a sketch plan. And then even gets as far as preliminary and it's approved. Or almost approved, and something changes in your thought process and would have ticked all the boxes because you didn't think about it at the time.
But I think the boxes would have been different, right? I mean. Cause you wouldn't have. At the concept stage, you wouldn't necessarily have all of this filled out, right? You wouldn't know what. All of the point scores would be. You might have a ballpark estimate based on, rough design guidance. But I think it's a different challenge than we see a concept and they haven't talked to the neighbors yet. And they paint a pretty picture. And then once you learn more about it. The feedback that you gave at concept was naive. That's the situation that we face today. I don't think this makes that worse. What it does do is between those two steps, now there's additional criteria that have to be satisfied that might maybe weed out some of those projects or make them modify the plan before it gets to preliminary to accommodate the requirement.
Yeah, it comes subjective as to how much feedback they use, right? Well, we listened and we implemented X, Y, and Z, but X, Y, and Z are minor compared to what the real concerns are, but I don't know, I like the idea of it. But it does give me pause that there's an expectation that it will move forward if we've hit all those things, right? And I also see there's people would look at that list and go, when I come in with sketch plan, I'm gonna make sure I hit X, Y, when I'm gonna present it.
Does it give us more discretion if it's implemented in the code, not as a point system, but let's say they come in and they do hit those certain things, but we generally don't like something about it. Does it give us more discretion to be able to say, well, actually, we want you to change this as well, even though it would have scored well and it hits well because it's not a direct point system. It doesn't matter that it passed or anything. It's just something else we can point to in the code that we want to add.
I guess what I'm worried about is if it's not a requirement. They'll spend a lot of time and energy on the 2 or 3 things that are easiest and try to sell us on the 2 or 3 things, and we'll end up getting less good deals because we're trying to protect the discretion. When what we should be trying to maximize is what's the best overall outcome. I'm not sure that would get us the best outcome to have the maximum level of vagueness in the requirement.
I always thought that the PUD. I always think that the default position of a developer when they come in here is just by code. Right? Let's try to get it by code. And then we don't have to ask for anything special. And it's not that often that anything comes in here by code.
No.
I feel like if we have, if a builder is looking at like this, then we'll have more code development because they don't want to, they don't want to do this. And then we'll end up with worse developments because we'll have a bunch of code developments and you get nothing in exchange for that. And I was
the lot sizes.
Hmm?
Other than the lot size, the bigger lot sizes. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I thought that going into this, the initial exercise was to actually change the code. Not to change the PUD.
Okay.
And I've said it before, but strengthening the PUD without us doing something like this in the PUD is, I thought the better way to do it would be to code, not,
Strengthen the
Strengthen
zoning
the-
district code. like-
yeah,
Okay.
do it that way, so we have a minimum. Rather than. But we didn't do that.
I don't disagree with that. I think the issue is how do we strengthen it? Because I feel like the issue and the reason we haven't seen any code, the claim that for why we haven't seen any, just by right developments is that they don't want to or can't meet the lot sizes.
No, there's two things. It's the, two things at play. So my understanding is it's very difficult, with the features that we have to hit the density targets that our comp plan
Mm.
requires. And so a development that comes in that doesn't meet those density, levels are technically not approvable by our comp plan. Obviously there's some wiggle room with that, but that's the general theory. And so if everybody came in with those lot sizes that are in the code, it could be very difficult to hit our density targets within the MUSA. And then the other moving target is just the market demand and the housing costs in general and trying to minimize those. So, and maximize the profit at the same time. So there's two things at play. So I don't think it's just our density, but I do think that is a significant piece.
The reason I bring it up is I agree with you. I'd like to strengthen our zoning district standards code. But I can't imagine in doing that, a change that we'd propose is like lowering the RSF2 lot width lower than 80. I wouldn't think. Just
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm having the PUD process be. I mean, it could dissuade people from doing a PUD and then we just get a standard neighborhood which nobody wants. Potentially.
right.
But I kind of look at this as the guideline to decision making. Rather than this is the decision making. So I think everything's in here. I really get in. I have challenges with like. There's still subjective stuff in here.
Development's always going to be subjective, though. We can do our best to try to make a formula, and I did where I could, but some things are going to be subjective.
Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna go with that. So. The like one of them that I think is good. Is. An identifiable neighborhood focal point. And so like, I don't know, what's that? If it's a barn, I mean, that's obvious, but if it's a clubhouse, is that a focal point? Maybe. Is a monument that has a nice picture on it a focal point, or like a big oak tree that we saved that's like 300 years old? Is that a focal point? So like, I feel like having this as a guide is good. I really think we're gonna lock ourselves into bad decisions, potentially bad decisions with it.
Kind of thinking out loud. I mean, since we do have a outline for the code update, which can also be turned into an outline for, I guess, an outline for the point system versus just an outline for the code update with these categories in it. Could look at implementing it as an update of just the categories, not the system, seeing how that goes for a year and having this to go back to if, okay, we're not seeing an improvement in our PUD applications. We're not seeing the development we wanted to see, that we hoped putting this in the code without a system would be, then we could look at doing a point system.
I feel like we should take the opposite tack. Because we are not thrilled with the output of the current system. And we're reluctant to change because of a fear of a lack of discretion. When it's not that common that we deny the kinds of developments this is intended to deal with anyway. I think if we end up finding ourselves in a position in the future where we're feeling like we're strong armed into approving something that we don't really want to approve, then we would look at maybe scaling it back and removing that hindrance. For the sake of perfecting the process and trying to get something closer to our vision. Versus being afraid to take a step that's big enough to actually accomplish our goal. I'm afraid that if this is just a vague guideline that we decide we value in a meeting in March 2023, in August, we won't adhere to most of it, and we'll end up approving things like we approved in 2022.
Even if it's in code.
I don't trust us. As an organization, not as individuals.
Right.
But I don't trust that the system can produce the output that we want it to produce, the way it's presently constructed.
Gotcha.
I think today's examples of PUD benefits of what we're gonna see. And I think we all kind of pick those apart. It would be nice to see some concrete benefits come through. Like. Even with the benefits, there was some stuff that I think we would have liked to see, have higher levels of architecture and whatnot, so. Straight zoning might be nice to see to some extent if we can agree on straight zoning, but I think everybody's gonna come in with PUD no matter what, because
It's been history.
How did today's thing score under this?
It didn't.
It would not score well.
It wouldn't score, the way we have this written is concept plans are being reviewed under our current ordinance.
Yeah,
And so I haven't scored it because it isn't really something that'd be under the point system. Even if it were to come back,
yeah.
it would still need to potentially be adjusted with the required open space, the 7.5 foot setbacks that he called out, because that doesn't exempt them, it just exempts them from the point system. Just because like Hope Community, that concept plan, it's hard to tell someone we're maybe adopting something. and-
Yeah, no, I get that. I get it.
So
But
if
did
we-
you score it?
I didn't try, no, but looking at it, it wouldn't have hit any of the categories that I could identify.
So, but
It could, so let's see here. Placement of uses to integrate with adjacent uses, there's arguably something there with the transition of lot sizes, but I'd have to look at it. Collaboration with adjoining landowners, that's something that would have to become, but there's potential for them to do that still. That they'd be exempt from commercial. If they did some kind of park or green square for the community, that could definitely be an identifiable neighborhood focal point. Let's see here.
There are things they could do, but
Yeah.
as it was presented, it really wouldn't.
so why didn't you say something to them?
I did, I
No,
said.
but I know, but like. These are your favorite, not your favorite, but you put these together. You're an advocate for this. You never mentioned these criteria during
No,
your
I did.
feedback to them.
I said they should look at and
Yeah,
listen
you
to
did.
the
You-
conversation.
Yeah, you did, yeah, but not specifically today. So you walked,
No,
so
today.
Yeah, he did a couple of them.
did he
Open
mention
space.
cul-de-sacs being open?
No.
I
but
didn't
open
detail
space.
them specifically because I knew we were gonna have a conversation where some of these might get cut.
yeah, you
or
talked about
modified.
15%.
Yeah, I remember, yes, I remember you talking vaguely about it. It would have been a very good example of, the, of a potential score here for today's, for the use right after. By the way, this one would have scored a 10 out of 1,000 or whatever.
It's also hard because I don't know, we have enough info on a lot of the stuff, like the land, there wasn't a landscape plan.
No,
Not even
and
any-
yeah, this really wouldn't come into place until preliminary. The concept plan really, it's just supposed to be the first step they take before they sink thousands of more dollars into this project.
Feel like they put a lot into it.
Well, they've had to get it to this point, yes, and I think that's true, but you don't want to add I mean, our preliminary PUD, preliminary plat, I mean, that's like $12,000 just to submit that application.
Yeah,
And so you really want a smaller concept plan because if the feedback is, we hate this, there's no way you're going to get approval from a majority of council, and then what we have right now written is 4/5 majority of the seated council. So,
so
I-
hypothetically speaking, if let's pretend that all of these things were in a list, no points were, because one of these options is no points, because that potentially hamstrings
mhm,
the council.
mhm.
So if we have this list and they come in here and we say, okay, let's go over the list of things we think are important in a PUD.
Mhm.
Visual terminal. No. What about the percentage of units within 1,000 feet walk from park? Today we had, I don't know, percentage of units 1,000 feet, it's like 10%. In today's, there's not a park anywhere near that. Or there's a park across the street, I guess. Cul-de-sacs were not open-ended.
Yeah, so that wouldn't even count because it's a future park.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't see any open space, let alone green natural corridors. There is no, they're not gonna keep a greenhouse or anything else. Lot size variety, there wasn't much. Is there exceptional landscaping? Buffer homes, major roads, we don't have any major roads, so that, like, it's easy to walk, it would be easy to walk through. Through a PUD circumstance. And just go through these and say, this is good, this is not good, this is good, like even without assigning points. You could just tell from the conversation, gosh, you're not hitting a bunch of stuff that we've already said are really important to us. So I feel like without being tied to a point system, having a list of things that we just go through and talk about is wise. So I think it's a good thing even without the points. I think points are a negative part of it. But that's just me.
There is a list of things in the existing PUD ordinance that says we value certain things. Integration with the existing neighborhood, architectural standards, things like that.
Yeah.
But it hasn't really driven a lot of attention. The nice thing about having it as.
We just went through an exercise where we specifically laid out, like, this is gonna get a lot of attention. Don't you think?
I think what will happen, if it's a list, people will read the list and they'll find a way to spin what they're already intending to do to key into as many things on the list as they can, but I don't think they're going to change their plan to accommodate the things that we say are important, unless it's a requirement.
That's when you have your bullshitometer on.
Mine was going off all over the place, right? I don't know about you guys.
Why didn't you give him that feedback then?
I did.
You're so easy on it. Like you have said, we need to be harder on people about these PUDs. And you were not, that did not match what you said to those people today. You should have been harder on them. Because you have been the biggest advocate for the city being hard on PUDs.
And essentially what I told them to do is cut 15% of your units, create open space, widen all of your lots,
And make it for.
and look at these other listed things we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes. We ended up doing it an hour late, but
Yeah, I hear you. It's,
And we all said it, that we. Wider lot size, and they came to us with the other one at 32 feet.
well, we could have
and
had
whatever, and we said 50.
But they
and
could have
still
narrow-
Came back to 44.
narrow lot sizes, like if they had 30-foot lot sizes and then had a big park. That would be okay, I think. I mean, it's just so
Yeah,
it's to, I like what you've done. I think I don't need to talk about it anymore. I like the list. I think that we're gonna get better for having this. And we should have we should have went through next time exactly what's important to us. And use that as a better determiner of what we get from a PUD.
There are a couple provisions that I think maybe we should discuss that I think either way, if we're doing a point system in code or the listing code, we'd want to make sure get included. That would be, I find it in my notes here. The 4/5 supermajority of the seated council members for approval.
That 4/5, just so I get straight on it, would make it harder to approve PUD.
Make it require more buy-in.
You couldn't pass it on a 3-2.
You couldn't pass it on 4-1 either, right?
You could pass the 4-1.
To pass it 4-1, you wouldn't be able to pass it on a. I think you could pass it on a
4-1
4-1, you could pass it on a 3-0, you could not pass it on a 2-1
or a 3-1.
or 3-1, correct?
You could pass it on a 3-0.
Because that's 100% of the seated majority.
Be anything that's above 80% of the seated majority.
Yeah. I almost say if you go down that route, and want to be restricted, I almost say you almost need a full quorum. But you can't do, that's hard to do, right?
And that was our
You know,
discussion in
that-
my
you
read.
know,
Yeah.
you gotta have a full quorum.
The original draft had a 4/5 majority of the council. And then there was concern how that would work if there was repeated absences of the
Right.
council over a couple meetings, and they ran it up against the deadline. So I think the idea, and I think most applicants are still gonna want 5 seated members, is probably their best bet. To have, barring absences. So I think that would be staff's ability would be to always try to encourage this get scheduled for a full council. If we realize there's an absence, we would ask the applicant if they want to take the risk or if they would prefer to wait for a full council. But if it comes to a situation where we're up against the deadline, we don't have any other choice, we can hold the vote.
I guess the more I'm thinking about it, the language in page like 116 through 16 of 16, the actual code updates outside of the points, which is in the next section. The text amendment would go through either way, right?
I'm sorry, can you say the question?
So outside of the points rubric, if we were just to pass it as into code as guidelines or a list of preferred things, this section of the code update, all these new provisions would pass or would go in pending a public hearing. and-
Yeah, so basically subdivision 7 would be changed PUD benefits, and I think my thinking, if we were to go the unweighted route,
Mhm.
would be PUD benefits. PDs are expected to provide a combination of public benefits in exchange for flexibility in zoning ordinance requirements. The desired benefits include, and we would list that out.
Gotcha. But the other things like,
Everything else would stay.
okay. Then, like, subdivision 7D. How would that?
Yeah.
On a 1-for-1.
So I would have to, I would keep that. It just might be Z. I don't know
Yep,
exactly what
and
that would look
that-
like, but
That's fine.
yeah, and it might be that A just has several sub bullet points, and then it really, the CD would stay the same. That makes sense.
I think that kind of covers most of my other ones, was the neighborhood meeting topic. I would kind of like to see that be more than 350 feet. I'm assuming we copied that from what our current is, which I would like to increase in general.
I would say we can work on increasing that And then once that's increased, we would just increase this at the same time. I don't think it makes sense. To mail it out to people who wouldn't get a public hearing notice.
Sure. That's fair enough, but I do think we should work on getting that updated too.
Okay. No, fair enough.
John, did you have?
Well, I was thinking that in C on page 4 of 16. This is neither here nor there, but I keep thinking of, and I keep saying, if they have lesser lot sizes, like perhaps the required open space is too little in that.
So the way it plays with park dedication, though, we're starting to really get into tricky territory. And it's something I think we discussed maybe 2 meetings ago, because they also have like, depending on what density, they have also large park dedication requirements, land dedication requirements. That this wouldn't necessarily count towards. So that's why we're trying to keep it at 15%. And once we get to like 20%, some of the examples we've had are basically twin homes.
Yeah, required a different housing.
Oh, yeah, to meet some of the
Yeah.
density.
You know,
This is only for low density though, right? So you wouldn't necessarily be worried about anything but.
Okay, no, that's fair. But the twin home thing does still stand. The example that we viewed with the conservation district for. We would be basically forcing twin homes. I don't think that's our goal. I don't think we're discouraging twin homes per se, but I don't think that's what we want to see by default.
Or just weird name.
So with any other specific provisions? Worth pointing out.
I think on the point allocation, or part of the way we can try to deal with the potential for people over optimizing and not generating an on balance favorable system is probably to look at the heaviest weighted items and make sure they're not so heavily weighted that they can tip a scale on something we wouldn't want to move forward on. So I was going to suggest that we look at anything that's got a maximum point value above 30 and curtail them down to 30 points. So that would mean like for category 4, units within a quarter mile of a focal point would go from a max of 50 to a max of 30. And I agree, John, if we wanted to add a little more definition on what would count as a focal point to deal with your concern about, can this just be something that we don't want neighborhoods built around non-significant things, we could certainly add some more flesh. Distribution of attached units could go from 40 down to 30.
You get, so there's a exceptional landscape in the buffer. I mean, there are a lot of 50 pointers.
Yeah, I thought on exceptional landscaping, I was gonna propose. Instead of the 5th bullet, all vegetation must be salt tolerant. We just make that a requirement of the category and not have that be worth an extra 10 points. And the between 70 to 85% evergreens, maybe strike that one. But keep the other items at 10 points, and then you end up with a max of 30. That also helps deal with the question from, well, actually, never mind, it doesn't deal with that. So there was a question, I think it was from Jay, about how much needs to get planted to count. 1 tree, 1 shrub, does that count as
I think it was, yeah.
exceptional landscaping? We might need a quantification thing on this one too.
Yeah, Jay had the question on, you talk on item 9.
Yeah,
For instance, what if I had 1 foot of fence, plant 1 evergreen tree, plant 1 shrub? Is that worth 30 points?
No, I would not rate that as worth 30 points.
I would agree.
should we maybe think about using the buffer yard definitions and like call out a class or something? Like class C, class D would count as exceptional landscaping.
I'd have to look at it because the right now buffers from
major, I have to take a look at it. I'm not as familiar with that ordinance. I mean, I have the basic idea, but that one's Kendra's, so. I could take a look.
If we're looking at changes, though, we're likely looking at. Maybe planning commission. Right?
Yeah, it depends on the extent of the changes. If it's enough changes that you would like to review it again as a body before it goes to planning commission, then that would delay that. But if you're comfortable with it and we're just making, you feel these changes are fairly minor, then
What are we voting on? Are we just having a conversation or are we voting?
this is a discussion.
I guess it'd be a vote to, we want to send it to public hearing in whatever form. And part of me wants to get some of the feedback from the public and from the commission on some of the specifics, which I think we'd still be meeting requirements if we, whatever form we send it in, have that be what's the public hearing is on it. We can still make edits to that.
Oh, certainly. We're not under a review timeline, so we could hold the public hearing and we could still take a few meetings to finish it, certainly.
For what?
If so, I just want to make sure that we're, whatever we send to the public hearing, we're not locked into that specific. If we get feedback from kind of the whole purpose of the public hearing, if we get feedback from the public or from the commission that lead us to change it, we'll have the ability to do so.
Yeah, we can send that exactly as it's written down.
And
I don't think that, I mean, I think any changes that you're thinking of at this point would still be helpful. I wouldn't recommend sending it as is if we're thinking there's going to be a few changes, just because we want to get feedback on our latest thoughts.
I would, but I think your overall point of, we could send it and changes, whatever, if there's changes that we're just not seeing now, we could make those edits before we implement the actual final ordinance. I would agree with some of the conversation that you said about lowering some of those higher point totals. With the possible exception of the landscaping one, which I don't have a good answer for that either. That gets tricky, but I like the idea. But I think some of the 50 pointers were probably too high. That we touched on earlier, the focal point and stuff like that. So maybe 30 is a more reasonable number. Let's see here. There were some other commission comments, and this is what I'm hoping that'll get brought up at the public hearing regardless. I know Corinne had quite a few, Mark had a few.
They all have a lot.
Yeah, they did,
And the
which
one-
is great.
The one thing I keep going back and looking at all of them. While these points and everything that's going on, is there any way? Any of them could just turn into. They check the box instead of valuing the points and all of them. I'll go back to Mark's comments, the last part of his thing, is it's a yay or nay, does it matter or not? And that might be simplifying it too much. The point system has been established and has worked for a long time over in Maple Grove. And I think the comments that have been made, is if they pass it, they go through. And I think that Jeremy said it well, I don't trust it. It just almost comes to a point where we just gotta say, hey, we gotta try it and see if it works and then correct as we go.
And it's
But then
interesting.
we get bashed when it wasn't right to begin with. How did you
We
come
get
up with
bashed
that?
anyway.
I know, I just,
That's true.
I'm thinking all out and stuff like that, it's a really good starting point, but how much can we massage it and do it without getting more opinions than the planning commission and us? Are we gonna get comments and input from developers, builders, all of these people? Are we gonna hear from them?
We know what that's.
Well, I think we know what they'd say, but will we get input from them?
We would.
We'll
love to
solicit
have
it, but
input
what we
from them.
get-
I wouldn't hold my breath that.
Yeah.
Be there to. Do so, but if we can. Get the word out, great. No.
Everyone that we've talked to about the incoming changes that they're. It basically makes it, they feel it makes it impossible to develop in Corcoran, so I don't know if it really is.
This does?
Mhm.
Jesus.
I mean, that's generally the train of thought. I'm not trying to put words in people's mouths, but it's that. The fact that it seems like they can't come in under a straight plat with our current zoning, and then they can't come in with a PUD because they're not gonna be able to hit all of these points. And then they have to meet a 4/5 majority. They feel like it's gonna make it impossible to develop. Now, that's the feedback if we wanna hold a panel on it, but I have a feeling that's gonna be the general.
Violins playing in the background when they have all those complaints. Yeah.
I mean, if you would like to have a panel with the developer, we could try to see. If
We
could.
tried that.
Yeah, but I
It
don't
didn't
think,
work.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's gonna be. much
Steph's the only one that came.
difference of a-
There was another guy.
I know, I'm just joking.
But it is interesting too, because Dean, you're talking about how it's been a successful. Implemented system in Maple Grove. And you can kind of look at it two ways. They haven't denied an application. Because. It's worked and it's filtered out bad applications from what they don't want, and what they want is almost certainly different than what we want,
It was
But-
twice as long
given their system.
in their system.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference for us. We just don't have as many categories as Maple Grove does.
They had a lot.
But the planning commission
cut
did
out.
have a few thoughts on some additional categories we could add if we wanted to.
Well, yeah, it's worked so great that everybody in Corcoran thinks that whatever we do, it shouldn't look like Maple Grove. Why would we pattern our decision?
Right.
Well, I don't think we are. I
John,
think we're
think
pattern.
the key thing there is, you remember maybe a year ago, Natalie gave us the Maple Grove one, and we went through it. And we struck out all the things that we didn't
Yeah.
think were important for us.
Yeah.
So we'll have a
system
point
is the same,
system,
but
but the categories to attain points are much narrower.
what we're valuing is different.
So I get, yeah. Do we do more work on the points or do we do more work on?
I'm trying to think.
Because if we look at the feedback.
Hmm.
The feedback is additional, some of the feedback is. Additional things to add to the things we think about. So have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It's like,
Or do we? Extend this out a bit if we don't care about it going to the April Planning Commission and. I don't think we're anticipating a big new development to come in that we're not. Just out of the blue in the next month that. This would or wouldn't apply to at this point, so I don't think we're on a hard deadline, I'd rather get it right than. Quick. Do we, now that we've had this conversation? Think about it some more, I don't know.
Well, the beautiful thing is even if someone comes in, right, it's PUD.
True. So, yeah, we could, unless we just all had collective amnesia from this conversation, we should be good at least in the short term. Yeah, I don't know.
Some of the things that we were asked to consider adding are sort of subsets of existing.
I kind of agree with some of that.
You have a couple examples, Jeremy?
Well, like Jay suggested. Should we give points for community gardens? And that's actually part of number 4. As an example, community gardens are an example of a neighborhood focal point. So there's a way to get points from having community gardens. There were. Corinne talked about native plantings for additional points. That's just, I think, adding a word or two into some of the existing categories around extensive land. Natural resources being retained. So there are definitely some minor tweaks that I think we can easily do to include some of that feedback. And I think a lot of that was good. I thought maybe a new category for larger tree sizes. They go above the minimum by
Yes.
some percentage instead of a 2.5-inch tree, they do 4-inch trees. or 10-foot conifers, maybe
Yeah,
that's
you're
where
talking
it's
about
10 point.
that I was thinking. That for
Yeah,
a second, I was like,
first.
yeah.
So I only have one vote. So my suggestion would be we hone in on the categories and wait on the points.
And in terms of just what we're trying to accomplish today and
What we send forward to
we send forward, okay.
is like, we have enough, I think, to go on. Send it forward and get public comments.
That's what I'm wondering is if we hone in on some of the category thing that like you're talking about, can we then make the change on as big of an item as whether or not it's a list of items in the code or a point system?
I think so, yeah, because as long as we're being transparent with the categories that we're considering, it wouldn't be material change between those two.
The biggest thing that we would have to make sure that we'd be doing is if generally you want to post, like we're required to post 10 days before a meeting, the outline of the ordinance, but you can make changes because we might have different ideas at the meeting. So as long as we're meeting the 10 days posted notice before the day we adopt the ordinance, that we have.
If it's not a material change, when it's a material change, then we would have to send it up for public hearing. But I don't believe it'd be
Don't
material change.
whether
to
it's
have
points or
point
not.
System as a policy
I would agree.
document versus having categories in a list.
Gotcha. Okay, so maybe we should hone in on the categories and then have that decision be based on the feedback we get at the public hearing. And at our next meeting.
Yeah, then we'll at least know what we're looking at.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do we need to add anything that we have based on the commissioners?
Well, let's see.
Corinne suggested for 18. Use of native plants and landscaping, currently 5 points. You can make that one 10.
Or I think we're not gonna worry about the points yet.
Yeah, I think
Okay, so you
maybe
just mean
we-
ruling in or out different categories.
yeah, do more of
Different
that. And then we-
suggestions.
Were there any categories anybody wanted to strike?
I don't have any.
No, I think it's more about just about the weighting, which we don't need to get into now. And we've kind of touched on already, but really heavily weighted items. I don't know if there's any full categories.
Want to the weight that we talked about and they send that forward.
I'd say we had some general consensus on the 50 went down to 30s, so maybe we should make that change, but other than that, let's not tinker with the points too much.
Yeah, are we sending points for the public or?
I think we'd send
I think we'll
that draft, but then the discussion would be, we could then implement it as a point system, we points if we need, or as the list. And that's the public hearings.
Question I do have based on our previous item, we did have as a bonus category, natural restoration work, which rewards developments that restore wooded areas, prairies, wetlands, and soils, and we said that that was not a public benefit. So should we remove that category, or do we want to remove just soils?
What is that?
Number 22, one category.
I think the difference I would draw is in the discussion we had earlier tonight, they weren't restoring prairie. They were restoring home sites.
Yeah, it's
It
the
would-
opposite
it would be
of what you're
restoring
asking
soil.
for.
Then yeah, I'd take soils out, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there any time that we would?
They're filling in a
anything
wetland.
that would
I never
cause-
mentioned that, but.
Yeah,
I think the intent with soil was maybe like converting ag back to a prairie. But the interpretation of soil could
probably be more broadly applied. So I
Okay.
think the intent of that natural resources, hey, there's a farmland or a wetland that's been farmed forever, they're gonna restore it back to nature.
I see, okay.
I think maybe that's.
So maybe I need to say reward developments or restore back to nature.
Or something like- I think
Okay.
there's an element of returning soil to its native environment,
Okay.
that I think is what that, that restoration was.
So I could
And
clarify.
not to apply it to sort of
Clean up.
use, you know.
Yeah.
It's a different thing, conversion back from farming to
Mhm.
very different than cleaning up and remediating contaminated site.
Would that be captured with restore wooded areas, prairies?
Wetland.
That would be fairly captured.
Yeah, I mean,
Fields.
agricultural, I mean, you could just define soils, I think.
Okay.
So that you can, or carve out, this does not apply to traditional, we can work
Mhm,
some sort of traditional
Mhm.
remediation of.
mhm.
Brownfield remediation to
Yeah.
developed land.
I mean, the only time where I think it would be
Pretty good.
super extensive, which would be if you have a significant
Mhm.
site that has significant problems and significant,
Mhm.
groundwater problems where they somehow bring in a significant amount of money to correct a problem that somehow impacts properties, below ground or above ground. I think it would have to be a significant unicorn project, so to speak, that would be obvious, that remediation would be a benefit. That's where maybe that could be considered, but
Yeah.
a cleanup of a homestead in a conversion,
Mhm.
I would agree that I would view that as a public.
Okay.
But I do think the soil in there was intended to be like converting tilled area, especially marginal tilled area for some national vegetation. I think that was probably being intended.
I can do that.
Okay, any other categories? In terms of adding?
What about any of the suggestions that the
Yeah,
Planning.
commissioners made, yeah, I mean, let's go through them.
I don't see, so John didn't have any other than the points, and we're not talking about points right now. Corinne had,
But
what?
go ahead, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh. Corinne had points questions more than anything else. Except she had some suggested categories. Lawn and the legumes, compost. Pervious trails. I think that's covered, but maybe not. Local contractors.
I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah, I don't think we can, because you're not supposed to base approval on the applicant.
Yeah.
Couldn't this category of innovation, you don't say, of new technologies and materials get us into some issues with our approved materials list? Because, we have approved standard materials, buildings.
I think it's a PUD, so we would be able to, we'd be able to evaluate it and how it stands, so, but there's nothing saying that in the ordinance itself, it's not saying that has to be this, has to be these architectural standards or approved materials. That's just the underlying assumption, and then the PUD would be,
They often ask for different materials, right? A substitute.
right, and so the benefit would be something that's more, that allows for innovation in the building material. There's, a really interesting book that's talking about different energy systems that are coming online. And I think one good point would be we would want it to be a proven system, but I don't think it would really conflict with our ordinance in terms of approved materials, because since it's a PUD, we look at flexibility from those standards anyways.
Another one she talked about was the affordability aspect. I think that gets more into like other conversations besides the PUD, regardless of what we do, it's more TIF and that aspect. I don't know that
Affordability is so subjective too, because every developer that's coming in is quoted price, right? It's fun to ask because 5 years down the road, you can see how far off they were.
Or yeah, go back and watch the old videos.
Watch this video today,
Yeah.
it's $4,000 rents will be $8,000.
Yep. They will. Let's see here, Jeremy, you already, or someone talked about the trees, the height and girth of trees planted, some mature plantings. I think that's a good thing to add in there. There would seem to be a few different commissioners that discussed maybe in different ways, the embedded units. Corinne was saying her concern is more about the single family lots being preferred, single family homes being preferred on the interior lots. Our draft has what points for not having large segments of multifamily to like a townhouse with more than X number of units.
25 points, so reduce the amount of attached units visible from major roadways. It's 25 points maximum, and it's based on the perimeter roadway and linear feet with attached units. So, I'm sorry, the percentage of the perimeter roadway.
Gotcha. Any thoughts on that? I feel like another commissioner commented on it, but I can't seem to find it.
I think Commissioner Brumman talked about that one.
Yep.
And the interplay with the exceptional landscaping. My concern with this category is that while it may be more visually appealing from the roadway, I believe the market supports the fact that single-family homes desire more seclusion and would prefer the interior lots. Since attached units have higher density, wouldn't having them embedded also drive more traffic to residential neighborhoods rather than keeping it to the outskirts? Additionally, single-family residents along roadways are more likely to put up privacy fencing. So rather than a row of attached homes, we may get a row of fencing. I think perhaps we should consider a landscaping or buffering requirement for having attached homes along roadways or the exterior of developments.
And that's kind of the buffer. For this.
So we could remove that category, or we could try to work it in with the buffer, because it's in with the attached. Try to figure out how to do that, but if the idea is that we're not necessarily concerned about attached units, as long as they're a buffer, I could try to figure out a way to work them.
I don't know if that's the case, because I feel like we've had a lot of applications come in that we've been concerned about. That's the first thing people are seeing is a bunch of townhomes.
Hmm.
So I think I get her points. I think there's maybe a balancing act we have to do there though. Right, 'cause that's been a concern by
Yeah,
all of us.
yeah, consistent.
So I
It's
think-
specific to major roadways, so if we're
Right.
talking about a minor roadway where there's attached units, that category simply wouldn't apply.
Right, that's a good.
Yeah, sort of like reality is with that development tonight,
Yeah, they wouldn't.
we'll never see it.
Right. Right. So they actually probably could have attached units, but that's not what
Yeah,
they.
Let's see here, proposed category 9 on Corinne's letter.
Center library
Hmm,
on the packet, or is it?
yeah, it is.
And
It's
they
very
are
end.
at the back.
He sent it in actually very specifically Tuesday, March 7th at 1:08 PM. But this is just something I don't really know enough about, the non-native versus native evergreen trees. Is there enough variety that we could require them to be native evergreen trees? And
So my concern with native plants is a lot of studies being done that are showing our native plants are changing. So I think even the term native could become very subjective in the next 20 years. And I think there is a lot of cool things being done in terms of trying to find hybrids that can handle the heat and cold of Minnesota. So I wouldn't want to exclude an evergreen that provides that additional screening, but maybe considered a hybrid. So that's my only concern with it, with the word native. But, and so I would just be careful about requirement only needs, I guess.
Should we think about using the tree list in code instead?
The tree list in the Northeast District. We could look at it. Again, I don't, the only issue again is excluding it to plants that are still maybe under development now,
Yeah.
that in 10 years from now, maybe a really hardy, accomplishes our goals, but it's not on the list.
Yeah.
And obviously we can change it, but again, the idea of the PUD is to allow for innovation.
Couldn't we add language that would say?
Or
these
similar.
Or similar approved by council?
Sure,
That's what I'd.
seems reasonable. Yeah, I could do that.
That covers hers mostly. Anything else standing out to anyone else?
I think a lot of J's come into the neighborhood focal points, like community shelter or building with picnic area. That would probably be an example of a focal point, like a common green.
Right.
Community gardens and farms, this would tend to incentivize those.
What about the on-site compost? Do we see that as a category that should be added or a subset in a different category or not something we'd like to see?
I don't know if I'd want.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, I feel like that's the conversation we had a few weeks ago when we heard of the proposed one that we didn't.
Well, a community compost, like, it's a different deal.
It won't be managed well, probably.
Yeah, you'll just have
Yeah, that's true.
raccoons and coyotes every single night and skunks. Yeah,
There you go. Yeah, maybe we should forego that one.
Forego that one. All right, fair enough.
What about hawk poles? We could do a hawk pole.
to take care of the raccoons, the baby raccoons at the.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think.
Utilization and incorporation of previously established trails. I think the idea was to minimize the additional impervious surfaces. Did we see value in that?
Where do you see that?
I don't know. I have it
Oh.
listed. Somewhere,
Fair enough.
it's in there somewhere.
Did you say that again?
Utilization or incorporation of previously established trails, driveways and walkways. I believe it was in Corinne's email, now that I think about it.
See, stab. Oh, so like. Like if there's a driveway on site for, maybe there's one driveway, like,
Yeah.
let's take Walcott Glen development, the existing driveway is there using
Incorporating
those.
that, yeah, into the design instead of removing it and redoing it, I guess would be the idea.
Why?
I think her explanation would be to minimize great question, but I think it's the impervious surface and to minimize the impact of the development coming in to utilize the infrastructure that's already there.
But they'll just,
On it.
but if you move a driveway, where the driveway used to be is an impervious, brand new impervious surface.
It would,
Yeah, that's still calculated, so I
understand
the point, but it's basically you calculate all the existing impervious and then you look at the new plan and it's all the new and you just weighted on the difference. So
Yeah.
whether it's relocated or not doesn't change the review at the watershed.
Mhm.
So it may be there's kind of two parts. There's like keep the natural features maybe part of that, but if you're just doing it on a additional impervious surface, I don't know if that would. I follow that argument, so to speak.
I don't know if it would work.
It's accounted for already. Even
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Right.
Fair enough.
But she was asking for trails and driveways to be made of pervious material. Rather than trying to keep.
I think that was also something she said, but I think she said both of those things, actually.
It was the third bullet on her second page, was what I saw.
Previous, that way is one.
Pervious. Oh my gosh. Did I just read it wrong? I apologize. I thought she was saying previous trails.
Oh.
Sorry. I summarized that incorrectly.
Gotcha.
Okay.
No worries.
Previous trails. Do you see value in pervious trails?
That makes more sense.
Yes, I apologize. Apparently I have, what is it, dyslexia?
Just tired eyes.
I don't know that I would assign points for it. I don't know. I mean, is that a major feature?
I think it'd be something we'd be open to if it was proposed. I don't know if we want to wait it. You know, like that's something that seems, even if we did do a point system, maybe that's just something we include as a thought for them to consider. Yeah. Like, I'm not opposed to it if someone wanted to do it. I don't know. It's its own category.
I mean, that's just from a technical standpoint, that's a little bit of maybe above and beyond, because some of those kind of stormwater enhancements, so to speak, treatment enhancements also kind of overlap with some of, you know, regulatory obligations. So are they double dipping on getting through a watershed permit or a future watershed permit and also say, but just, it would be, you have to maybe want to distinguish that, certainly in the consider, and then just the other thing is where that would apply. Because if it's on private property, I would encourage it more. If it's on public property, we can still do it. There's just a long-term maintenance cost to it that which should be factored in. It's all about value setting, but those type of pavements to function have to be maintained. So you really have to have a tight. I mean, they'll initially function, then they'll plug up. So if they're not regularly maintained, like significantly regularly maintained, they just bypass, right? They don't, they basically it's like a filter. It's like your furnace filter. They just plug up. So they're high maintenance. Again, it's just how you value them. They weave into different regulatory things, probably more in the future if you're looking 20 years out.
Well, also wasn't there at one point a concern discussed last year when we were looking at the Northeast District plan that just our clay soils don't really allow for them?
There's, so that gets to, but you can do, it's basically a filter instead of a filter into the groundwater, it's a filter and then into a pond.
Okay.
So it's a water quality benefit that
Yeah.
it's kind of the same as a buffer, like a wetland buffer that filters out water, filter trench filters out water. So that's what I'm saying is that it can be used as a water quality benefit at like a regular, for the watershed.
Yeah.
Future, it's just something to be aware of. It could overlap in a couple different approvals. Maybe that's not a concern. I would just, when you think about that, one factor if it's going to be a public air space or private space, and how it's going to be maintained, because like where you put your value is something that has to be maintained that can be effective.
Thank you. I think maybe we were saying that. Interesting idea. Don't know if it needs to be its own category. Unless you guys feel differently.
So just to make sure I understand the feedback, we're not really concerned about having that incorporated at all in the point system right now, or, okay. Right.
Yeah.
No, that sounds good.
We wouldn't be opposed to it if someone
Right.
presented it, but
Yeah.
doesn't need to be reflected in this, I don't think.
Okay.
I think that's most of for major ones that we haven't talked about. The only other thing, which isn't really a category, it's more the comments on the not wanting to require or create a situation where HOAs are required. I get her concern. I don't know if we've had any applications for developments in the MUSA that have not already had HOAs that I can think of. It just seems like they all do.
Most of them have HOAs, most things have HOAs
Yeah.
these days, especially when you have some common spaces that need to be maintained. So yeah, I don't know, especially if we had like an open space requirement, I really don't know how we would get away from an HOA unless we're willing to take on that open space as part of it.
Right. Right.
Given a topography, I don't think you'll ever see one without an HOA because there's so many lots they want to get off.
Yeah.
Develop them, they want off the tax rules.
Yep. You're 100% right. So yeah, I think I get her concern, but I think it's already happening, no matter what we do with this. For better or for worse. No. Anything else? We want to send this to planning for a public hearing, and then based on that, we'll decide which route to go with it.
I'd rather send it without points.
Send it with-
I think the points are a distraction at this point.
My concern would be we can send it with points. And probably pass it as just a code update without the point system. Can we do the alternative? We don't have the points. Can we add that in? Or is that more of a material change?
Well, so the points are policy that are referred to in the current text. amendment. So let me think this through. So. I think it would be less of a material change to send it with points than it would be to have it be a list of an unweighted list and then move to
Add the
points. Yeah. I think it'd be less of a material change, but while I agree, I think they're gonna get hung up on the weighting of points. I do think it's less of a material change on the back end to present it with the points, even if the point change values get adjusted.
It's like when we had the meeting and like everybody wanted to talk about how they didn't want the gas station on the corner. And it's like, I feel like the process to find what's important to a PUD is gonna be made easier. Identifying the things that are important, not trying to figure out the points, because I don't know if we as a council have an appetite for the point system.
Mhm.
I would rather not send the point system if we don't have if we have an appetite for a point system. I don't want to go forward with the point system at this point. I'd rather not send it because I think it's a distraction. I don't think it would pass in city council right now if we had a vote. So I would rather just not have that be a part of the discussion for now. And if we go through and crazy PUDs are being passed, even after having a discussion on the things that we want, then we just have add points like down the road. So I would prefer to cut the points now and not have that be a part of the discussion.
Okay. Natalie brainstorming.
Well, one idea would be, I'm thinking it through on the fly here, and I want to confirm with the city attorney. But
Okay,
if
good.
we were to, I could confirm with the city attorney that if we were to still keep it, the categories, a policy document and to present it as just a list of unweighted categories, but that's the policy document. Then if we were to add points later on to the policy document, that would not be as much of it. That doesn't require a public hearing because it's a policy. So that might be one way to
Well, who cares?
minimize the conversation.
Who
and
cares
have
if it
a-
has I mean, regardless of the answer to that question. So what if in a year, if we decide to adopt points? If we need to have a public hearing about it, so what?
No, and that's fine too. I'm just thinking in terms of we've working on this a year and trying to get something close-ended so that we can start using this system. And what I'm trying to avoid is having to do a second public
back-to-back
hearing
public
right
hearings,
away
yeah.
on this.
Yeah, my intent, when I say later, I mean like if in a year, we're not getting the results and we need to add teeth by adding points, then we add points. I'm not saying like I think it'll be a quicker process if we have a list of things. And
Well,
then,
I think that's what you were saying we could potentially do if that's okay with the city attorney.
Yeah, it just, yeah, and that's what I was trying to say is that we could still basically refer to, we'll just say the Corcoran's PUD public benefit categories and that be a policy document. And then we attach it, and so basically it's this document without the points assigned. And there's no threshold anymore. And so that would,
And then we can discuss that.
yes.
Of that if we just. sort of-
Yes, and then we could add points later without it necessarily being a material change, because now we're talking about a policy document.
That makes sense to me. My suggestion would be that we do that, send it without, like Natalie just explained. Get sign off by the city attorney first. If that's not doable, bring it back to council. On the. I would say the 27th, so we're all here.
If you don't go down the points option, is there a way to do like a ranked order? Would that be a, you've got all these categories, right? But at least rank them in order of importance to the council.
And that could be more just in the feedback they give, not necessarily in the draft of it itself, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about.
More just the discussion around it.
Is the negative consequence of including points that we don't think planning commission will focus the conversation correctly? Or is it we don't think we're going to like the outcome if it actually got adopted?
No, I think that.
Little hyper focus on points.
Yeah, that's.
So can you resolve that in how we set the agenda? Like, can you have one section on the categories? And then a second section on the concept of the points idea and weightings? So that they're forced to do the categories first and then separately discuss input on whether it's better to have a high bar that everybody has to meet or a generic list that everybody is compared to.
I'm gonna say, can I make a motion?
Sure.
Can I make a motion? We send. Just the revised language with no points. Forward.
Clarifying question. Is that as Natalie was explaining?
Yes, that,
Version? Okay.
yes.
We have a motion to do that, to send it to a public hearing. Also friendly, if it's signed off on by the city attorney, if not, to bring it back.
Yeah, with what's the specific question to the city attorney is?
Just clarifying what it would be a material change to try to make sure we're not duplicating public hearing efforts on the planning process.
What do you mean, a material change?
Because there seems to be some contention still on whether or not we want points in this initial adoption or whether we don't want points in the initial adoption.
So I'm saying, don't even ask that question. Send it forward. And with the intention of not adding points.
Okay,
So it's not,
So is that what you were saying or not?
I was saying, okay, we can certainly do it that way if that's. what the
That's
direction-
different from what you were saying.
I would still recommend at this point, we keep it a policy document so that we can adjust it as needed
Right.
in the future.
I just want to make sure that there's a difference between.
Yeah, there's a slight difference in that. What I was saying was allowing for us to add points in the initial adoption.
Right.
What he's saying,
Even though it wouldn't be. At the public hearing.
correct, yes, yeah, trying to prevent a material change so that we can move forward with adoption in May, if that's what our
Right.
goal is. But what I hear from Councilor Badema is his idea, it's just
Right.
the initial adoption would not include points.
Okay.
We just have categories.
So we have John's motion. Do we have a second for that?
I was second for discussion.
Okay, any further discussion?
I don't think we should tie our hands on a particular route. I think we'll end up, broadly speaking, preserving optionality as we're trying to make the policy makes more sense. So I would have feedback from planning commission and the public on the list and further refined conversation on the point system so the council can make a more informed decision later. Right now, it seems to me like it's better to have more teeth in the system. So I wouldn't want to not have that discussion and get that feedback.
well, I would just say. In defense of my motion, that. From what I've heard so far, that. I don't want to keep the points open. Points option open. I want to close it to further have a more. Germane or of more topical discussion on the specifics of the. Requirements and not the points. I want to focus our attention on the topics.
And I'm somewhere in between where I want to focus the conversation on that. That's why I like Natalie's suggestion of. Pulling it out And having it be a policy document that when it comes to us, we can add the points as we see fit, but the conversation of the public hearing would be on the rest of it without the points. Just the categories. And that's not removing the option of implementing the point system, it's removing it from this public hearing conversation. So it doesn't get sidetracked. And everything focuses on the points, because I think we have gotten information from all the planning commissioners and opportunity from the public to comment on point valuations.
But John's answer isn't gonna matter.
You, John?
No,
What do you mean?
Thames.
Oh,
If Thames says. In your example. The package that we send is non-points. All we'll get from an answer for Thames is whether we can do any add points later or not. You can ask if
Well,
it
what
has.
will
no hearing.
require a public hearing or not?
Huh?
What would require a second public hearing or not, essentially? So if, to try to avoid that, but
yeah.
yeah, that's the only.
But-
question.
But in the act of not sending the points. If Thames says. Yeah, if you add points, it'll require a public hearing. Then that's an answer, but it won't be relevant. And if he says, no, it won't, it also won't be relevant. We'll find that that's important for like in the future if we want to add points, but actually is not. His answer is not, it will not change the outcome. Our vote to send everything but the points going forward. Thames will just give us information on what we can do with it, but it won't actually have anything to do with what we do. You can still ask the question and we'll have it, but that it's not,
I don't know if I'm following. 'cause
our
I think
vote
it
is
will.
not dependent on what Thames says about.
It's not dependent, but there's a distinction.
I think if the idea is that we want to waive any possibility of opening it up for points at.
When it comes back to council.
25th meeting when we review this,
We should ask.
we should ask
Confirm with Thames that we can do that.
without an additional.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you very much.
But it would still have the actual impact of doing the exact same thing as what I think you're talking about. It's just would give us the option to add the points in as opposed to eliminating that entirely.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying we don't, that's it. I'm saying we eliminate the point system
Gotcha.
today. We don't move forward on the point system.
Well, what were you saying about pulling the points out? You were saying pulling them out of the ordinance and then just having it as a separate policy document.
Yeah, so right now, the PUD point system is a separate policy document that is incorporated by code. So instead of it being a point system document, we could just simply refer to it as the Corcoran PUD public benefit list is hereby made part of this section. And then it's still a policy document, so it's easier to edit. You don't need a public hearing to adjust a policy. So we could, and then we have basically this document that we've been working on, the PUD point system with a new title and no points. But it still explains the categories, it still provides. the categories.
Does that alleviate the concerns about up here about potential flight?
Yes, if it's an unweighted list with no threshold, then that would alleviate the discretion concerns, yes.
But also essentially the difference between what John's motion is and what Natalie's and Jessica were talking about suggesting is one eliminates the point system, right? We can't go back and look at doing that when it comes back to us. The other one would still send the same exact text to the commission for the public hearing, but it would reserve as long as
You could still pull it out for.
either way it'd be pulled out. We could put it back in if we do it according to staff's suggestion. We couldn't put it back in if we do it according to John's motion. I believe, right?
Well, I'm saying, I would want to check with things that it
Right,
would be a
right.
material change. And if it is a material change, then do we want to discuss things further before we send it to planning commission? If the general consensus from council is we want to move forward with the points. If the general consensus, general consensus is that we want to move away from the point system, then I think that would make the if then a lot easier. I don't think there would be a need to discuss it with.
So this whole thing, I'm sitting here and just listening to everybody. It would change if you go to page 1 of 9, Corcoran PUD point system. It would turn into Corcoran PUD list.
Public benefit, yeah, Corcoran,
Or
PUD,
public
desired public
benefit.
benefits.
And then the next statement would be number 1, placement
Remove all
of
the points.
uses.
Yep.
So as to integrate with adjacent uses, we'd eliminate purpose and criteria and all the points.
No, we would keep the purpose, we keep the criteria.
Why would we keep the criteria? This points will be.
Oh, no, you're right, you're right. I think then we would just
Okay.
we better define it. So we would use like the
Okay.
criteria. So placing features, we would just, we would take away the points
The
aspect.
criteria
But
definition
definition
would
as to
change.
what we mean when we're talking about this category, keep the pictures for the categories that have those examples. But removing all reference to points.
But again, I think either way of the two options we've been talking about, text of what we'd be sending would be the exact same.
Yep. I agree with that.
Wanted to make sure.
Take out the red
Points.
And the threshold.
and the threshold.
The distinction now being, do we want to eliminate the option or preserve the option for?
Yeah.
When it comes back.
And the criteria, right? Because the criteria would go away as well. If there's
No,
criteria.
instead of saying points will be awarded, I think it'll be definition. We'll change criteria to definition and so that we can better explain what we mean when we're describing this category. So I think there's still some benefit in keeping
think
features
we-
such as private parks, trying to explain what that category means, but we wouldn't have a points assigned to it.
Will getting Thames' opinion change anything? Will it change the,
I think we're hoping that it's confirming what we already think.
Yeah,
but we wouldn't, it wouldn't delay anything, would it?
Only if he said, no, you can't do that.
But we don't want to do it anyways.
I don't know that that's true.
We know you don't want to do it, but
Well,
we know that I do want to do it. Nobody else
Yes.
submitted.
okay, well, I made a motion that we send it without points. And we have a second, we
have
can
motion,
vote. If we
second,
don't do it, then
Conversation. So on John's proposal, a motion, second discussion, anything else? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Dean,
I don't know. Nay.
so either way,
The options.
Is there a way we can do it both ways?
that's.
John, what happens if we do it without points? What happens if we do it with points?
That's what we're basically asking.
That's what we're asking.
Right. So I'll make the motion to send this to planning commission as suggested by staff. With removing the points from text. Keeping it as a policy document. And preserving the option to implement that when it comes back to us. I'm missing anything else. I guess, subject to approval by the city attorney, failing that, bringing it back to council for the discussion on April 27th.
Second.
Mm-hmm.
Any discussion? Jess looks nervous.
No.
I like the
I'm
idea.
also trying to understand if there's a way that we bring you some resolution to the answer the question on the 13th. And still give us time to schedule.
Or there'll be 4 of us here on the board.
But
Yeah.
if we know that it's. due,
no, we could, because
Then we
I don't
can
need to
just-
send it. till
What's
the
public
14th.
hearings?
The public hearing is May 4th, so. we
There's
can
an advantage
even-
to
As long as we.
Oh,
get
okay.
the-
having the option.
Yeah.
So I could answer that question with the city
For
attorney on the 13th and we could go from there.
Perfect.
But you
Let's
still
do that.
have threshold.
So that will be my
You
motion.
don't have to meet-
We have a second. Is that, do we still have a second?
Second. I had discussion, but I started with Dean, but I'll
Something you want to share with the group?
bring everybody else in now. I like the concept of trying to have, if we're gonna agree on a point system, having it as a policy due to the greater flexibility in making adjustments. And then if we decide, hey, this is working out great, we can at a future date decide to put it in code. If we decide we need to modify it, we can do that more easily. If we decide we want to not use it anymore, we could just modify the policy to exclude it. So I feel like that gives us the most flexibility, but it lets you start from a position of having the highest bar. So you're not continuing to perpetuate the current systems foibles. Until you get some data as to whether the new system is better or not.
Current system, what
For instance, what we're doing now, where we
you call the.
Wanted to know the word you used.
foible, the flaws,
We're not actually voting to send the point system or use the point system.
Correct.
So there's-
just to have it as part of the discussion when it goes to the planning commission.
Yes.
public hearing.
Or, well, to preserve the option to,
it is not
us
part
to
of,
bring it back.
it is not part of the
public hearing.
discussion at the planning.
Yeah. correct. Not what's being sent to them. I suppose.
Unless it has to be in order for us to adopt it, right? That was.
Which we'll
No,
know,
it-
we'll know by the
no.
next meeting.
It's
Well, no.
not that either.
Well, if the city attorney says we can't, then it would come back to us on the 13th.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
you could make the.
That makes more sense.
then then
we say
the
yes or
13th,
no.
we determine if we're,
Yes.
if we're
it's a
using
no,
points or
yeah.
not.
Yes.
Yes, if we get a no, then 13th we determine that, yeah.
All right.
So the planning committee, so yes.
Okay. Is that clear to staff? Motion clear to staff.
Yes.
I was just gonna say the mayor would, if anyone wanted to participate in that vote. You said it on the 13th, when you weren't here. That's why you might wanna. Say it's 27th, I don't.
Yeah, the issue is we wanted to try to do it to be able to still meet that.
know it's okay, yeah, just.
We could move it, June.
Oh my God.
Well, either way, we'd be doing that if
Yeah.
we,
Well, we could go ahead and just notice for the May 4th, and then we can table it at the May 4th meeting, if we decide that we don't
Yeah.
like the response from.
I don't think we'd actually be signing up for points or no points on the 13th. All the 13th would do is determine whether. Planning commission is going to discuss it.
yeah,
So we could decide on the 13th, we want them to discuss it. That doesn't mean we're committing to actually doing it at that point.
correct. And that would only be in the instance that city attorney does not agree with what we're thinking.
Right.
Which I think I'm comfortable with the grounds that we're on. I think he will say it's okay. So, yeah, okay, I think we have that hammered out.
Okay.
So I will call the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nah.
Got through it.
Let's move it up in the agenda next time too, so we're not talking about it. And the.
Fair enough.
I am for that. Hey.
Don't have to convince Natalie. Okay, should be able to get through the rest of this pretty quickly. Staff reports,
There, if you have any.
Yeah. Planning project updates, pretty straightforward. We always have it. Utility services, connection, letter. Everyone good? Take a look. Perfect. Minutes update. Does that make sense to everyone? Perfect. Okay, we're good with that. Census. Then added item. City council is going into closed session to consider an offer for real estate. Under the authority of Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3, the city is permitted to close a meeting to consider offers and counter offers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property. City council is going into closed session to consider an offer for real estate. The following properties are subject of the closed meeting. PID 36-119-2333-0009, PID 36-119-2333-0010.
Our what?